Get ready for Off the Rails Right versus Left. Host Rob B. attempts to look at both sides of every political issue, as well as draw on the historic precedent and influences in modern politics, as well as the future being built by the leaders of our time. Like, subscribe, and sit back as we dive in at Off the Rails Right versus Left.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining us here. My name is Brad Lee, and I'm going to be interviewing congressional candidate Robert Brown for the 10th District of Texas. We're going to have the most in-depth interview with a candidate that you're going to see in this race. Feel free to leave comments, like, subscribe. If you have any questions that you may want to ask Rob, put them in the comments. Robert Brown's candidate profile: he's got 15 years in business management as a turnaround specialist. His key platform is term limits, capping federal spending to avoid austerity measures, and protecting the Bill of Rights, specifically the First and Second Amendments. His philosophy: he believes the government is the largest broken organization in the world and needs a business-style fix. And with that, I'd like to bring in candidate for Congressional District 10 of Texas, Robert Brown.
Well, I appreciate it, Brad. Thank you very much for doing this, especially when we're all like bundled up and trying to keep warm down here in Texas, because we're getting some very, very un-Texas weather right now.
Yes, absolutely. I know I'm freezing right now, as you've seen earlier. So tell us a little bit about yourself. Expand on your background, your platform, and your philosophy, and then we'll get into the questions that we're about to ask.
Okay, I started out, I grew up on a dairy, goat, and sheep farm, and all my siblings left, so I ended up kind of running the farm. And that ended up leading to me actually, because I turned around the farm, took it from losing money to making money. That kind of led to my career working with retailers. Specifically, I started with Safeway because we had a lot of business with them back in the day. And I ended up being a turnaround specialist for large retail corporations, going into broken business units, whether it was a store, district, or region, figuring out what the problems were and fixing the problems. Now, because they were usually losing money, it was fixing problems without spending money, which would be kind of a novel concept in Congress. So the reason I started running was actually right after, and we had a little bit of conversation about this, but right after the election, it already became very clear to me that the people sitting in Congress had no intention of codifying any of the policies that Donald Trump had just been elected on. So I decided, you know what, it's time. I started running against Pete Sessions, an incumbent. We got redistricted. 16th district anymore. I'm in the 10th district. Where I live now, Houston County over here by Crockett, Texas, is in the 10th district. Where I used to live over in Polk County is in the district. So I switched all my filings over and began running against Mike McCall. Mike McCall, about a month later, I think, dropped out of the race. And all of a sudden, all these other people piled in. But it hasn't changed anything. I don't see anything different in the opponents that I'm going up against. So I still think that I'm the best option to actually make some change and solve some problems in Washington.
Tell us a little bit about your platform.
Well, my biggest thing is we got to get the government out of our lives, out of our business, and out of our wallets. Regulation and regulatory costs are killing businesses. They're killing our pocketbooks. And then the fact that they keep spending money, they're propping up high prices, which hurts everybody in the district.
Okay, let's talk about a little bit about your philosophy and your business style fix.
My philosophy is that you kind of have to ignore the symptoms of problems. What I mean by that is, in this race, we have a lot of people that spend a lot of time talking about all the problems that we have in Congress, but they don't look at what they're actually talking about as the symptoms of the problems, and they don't actually look at the problems and what it's going to take to solve them. Like the affordability crisis. They keep talking about affordability, even though the real things driving affordability and inflation is the government printing extra money and pouring money into systems that keep the free market from driving down prices, because that's how the free market works. And it really looks to me like the people in Congress and the people in this race just don't understand how the free market works, because all of their solutions are pump more money into it. That doesn't really work in business. You pour money into something that's broken, it stays broken. It doesn't work in government, obviously. I mean, look at all the subsidies they've done for healthcare and food and
Education.
what's going on in Minnesota. Yeah.
Right.
So
you're saying you're a man who would like to come to Congress, not just to point out problems, but also to bring proposed solutions, which a lot of Congress people don't tend to do.
Yeah, and I absolutely have no intention of taking a back seat to the longer serving members of Congress. There is no stipulation in the Constitution that we have to jump through hoops to get any legislation proposed. So the first thing I'm going to be doing is fighting back against the Rules Committee, trying to silence the freshman and sophomore legislatures. And then I have a laundry list, like over 200 pieces of legislation that I'd like to get passed. I've already made lists of who's there that I can help get on board with it. And if I need to overcome the status quo over there in Washington, I'll use discharge petitions on every single one of them, because it's stuff that we need. And I'm not going to let the powers that be stop me from fixing this country.
Sounds good. Okay, Rob. So as you know, this is going to be the most in-depth interview that any congressional candidate is going to have probably in this entire race. So we're going to start off with the top 10 high impact questions for you. And I'd like to start it with this, the turnaround strategy. You've described the U.S. government as the largest broken organization in the world. What are the first three departmental audits you would initiate to find waste you're targeting?
First would be the military, because, I mean, you got to start with the people that haven't passed an audit in a decade.
Okay, and how would you start off with that?
Immediate legislation for item by item accounting for the expenditures, and anybody who's authorized any expenditures without accounting, gone.
Okay.
If you keep allowing them to fail, then they'll continue to fail. But we have a legislative responsibility to reel in the spending and make sure that the American people have an accounting for every dollar that's spent in the military. I don't in any way degrade the value of the military, but you're not getting your money's worth if you have no idea where the money's going.
Okay.
After that, I'd follow up with, well, I wouldn't even say audits. There's a lot of departments in the government, like the education department that they're working on getting rid of, that just needs to go away. The early setup of the agriculture department and urban and housing development, that was the fill in holes in the availability of resources for development in those areas. And those are no longer problems. We have the private sector resources that will actually go in and take care of the problems and the investments. But now it doesn't happen because the government's out of the way. The private sector ends up competing against the government, and the government has more money.
Okay.
And probably the third priority for audits would be, oh, that was three. I could go on all day.
You listed more than three. Let me ask you, how would you go about getting the rest of Congress on both sides to joining you in that fight?
Well, it's gonna take down. Every congressman's pretty public about what issues matter to them. Mm-hmm. And it's just going to take going through the work of getting with the congressman one-on-one, especially as a freshman congressman, going with the Congress people one by one and explaining to them what we need to change, why we need to change it, and how it's going to impact the overall health of the nation. That's part one. I think a lot of people in Congress, they don't really do a whole lot of work other than bloviating on social media. So if we, like I said, I have a list for each of my legislative pieces that I want of the legislators that are there. Obviously, because we're going to have 55 freshmen this year or this next term, I'm going to have to adjust that list a little bit. But I'm already making the list of the people that I need to work with in order to get the legislation passed, even if it means getting a discharge petition, which is getting over half of the body to sign on to the petition so the leadership can't avoid it.
Sounds great. Let's talk about fiscal austerity. You mentioned that without a spending cap, the U.S. faces a crisis worse than the Great Depression. How do you balance this fiscal cap with the massive infrastructure needs of Texas 10's growing I-35 and I-45 corridors?
Well, notice I didn't really say anything about cutting the transportation department.
Right.
Our highways are important. It is actually one of the jobs of the federal government to ensure interstate commerce. And part of that is the transportation sector. And part of that is the some other like FEMA and stuff to make sure that we have evacuation routes, stuff like that. There's different parts of the government that take part. But the austerity measures I'm talking about, like currently, Social Security is $1 trillion. The military is $1 trillion. Medicare is $1.5 trillion. And then we're paying $1 trillion on debt. So that puts us at $4.5 trillion of spending versus $4.9 trillion in revenue. We're just out of money. That only leaves $400 billion left to run the whole rest of the government. So if we want to keep advancing the actual infrastructure projects that are important, we've got to get rid of all the other spending. We don't need to be sending money to 200 countries around the world. We don't need to be propping up the defenses of other countries, especially since we have a tendency of propping up the defenses of countries that are not allies and eventually end up becoming enemies. Plenty of examples of that. And then it's just bizarre to me why nobody's wondered why we ended 2 wars, but the military spending didn't go down at all. The pandemic's over, but we're still doing the same spending levels of the pandemic. So there's a lot of work that can be done just to cut the spending and make sure that we can focus it on actual needs. And then a lot of that is also not just reverting to the state rights, but also the state responsibilities. Because the argument that the federal government should be funding state-specific needs is kind of erroneous, because then you got 49 other states going on. You're going to lose a quarter of the money in the bureaucracy anyways. And after that, you're going to end up having to spread out the money to 49 other states. So taking tax dollars out of Texas just so we get a little bit back is kind of a losing position. What we really need to do is just get the government out of everything so we can get the debt paid down and in the taxes. So all the money stays in the states where they can be directed by the local officials who know what the state actually needs.
Okay. The new district lines span from high-tech Austin to rural Houston County. How does your business management approach serve a district with such polarized economic needs?
Well, I think a lot of it, because my industry was retail and probably over half of it was in grocery, it kind of allowed me to have exposure to all different facets of the community, from rural agricultural areas, timber areas, and then the cities as well. So I've got that perspective. I understand what the community needs. I understand where the needs overlap, and I understand where they conflict. The rural needs tend to be more energy and water intense. But we need to come up with solutions for that don't just take it away from the rural area and don't just run up costs for the rural areas. Like the data centers is a big thing. They all want to go build a bunch of data centers, which takes out all the power and raises the electricity costs for everybody in the district when they're getting no benefit from it. So we need to make sure to remove the regulatory burden so the companies can like help themselves without taxing the rural areas. So, but I have that perspective that I'm able to understand the needs of the urban areas as well as understanding the needs of the rural areas.
All right. Those are both important communities. I think we would agree.
Yeah, this district is 70% rural, which is so it makes it kind of funny to me that like we got 4 elites from Austin, 3 people that don't even live in the district trying to run for the seat, and then, well, Ben Bias. Everybody in the district knows who Ben Bias is, so I don't even need to say anything else on that.
So you're a strong advocate for term limits. If elected, will you commit to a self-imposed term limit, and how many terms would that be?
So absolutely, I believe in term limits. Now, I've already done the public committal to their non-self-limiting term limits, but the first legislation I'm going to propose is for a constitutional amendment for term limits for the legislature. The legislature term limits will not exceed 12 years, which means you can do 2 years in the Senate or 2 terms in the Senate. You can do 3 terms in the House, and then you could go and seek 1 term in the Senate, but you'll be limited at the 3 House terms. And if you serve even 1 term in the House, you will only be eligible for 1 term in the Senate. So basically, everybody will be limited to a total of 10 years in the legislature, or 12 years. If you can't get it done in a decade, you're not going to get out of the way.
That's great, because that was going to be my follow-up question. What would be the outcome of that? But yes, I agree with you.
What was the last part that like broke up a little
bit? You clarified it. I was going to ask you what you would expect to get from term limits, and you clarified that by saying that if you can't get it done in 3 terms, you're not going to get anything done.
Yeah, and then the same thing with the Senate. Like, if you can't get it done in the lower house, then okay, you can still go run for 1 term in the upper house, and maybe you can get it done there. But by that point, by the time you've served 3 terms in the House and 1 term in the Senate, you've been in government for 12 years in the legislature. You obviously don't have what it takes to get what needs to be done. And you can go away and make room for somebody else. It's especially important. I got to add this in. It's especially important that we get the seats flipping over in the House, because the whole reason it had 2-year terms was it was supposed to be responsive to the rapidly changing needs of the voters. But it's not rapidly turning over, because we have people sitting there for Mike McCall, the seat that's being vacated now. He's been there for 20 years. But the system's so rigged that you can't get those people out of there. And really, their only job once they get elected is to keep running for election forever. And it takes their focuses off the people that they're supposed to be representing and puts it to the special interests that are keeping them in office, because without them, they can't stay in office. The whole system's broken, and making a mandatory cap, well, then we at least know the last 2 years that they're in the House, they'll actually be focused on their work. But it's definitely not responsive to the rapidly changing needs, which is what the legislature was designed, or the House of Representatives was designed for.
Okay. Now, you have stated the National Firearms Act violates the Second Amendment. Would you introduce legislation to repeal the NFA, and how would you address concerns about public safety?
So I think the public is more safe if more good people have guns. I can't be any clearer about that. Well, if there's more good people with guns that can respond when, for example, one of these mass shootings start up, and a good guy can take him out before he gets to kill 20 people, like first shot, somebody else takes him out, that's a lot more rapid, because the nearest cop is minutes away when seconds matter. So if you have good people with guns, I think you're better off. We've already, gun legislation doesn't stop bad guys from having guns. So pretending that any sort of legislation is going to increase public safety is completely erroneous. Some of the worst gun violence happens in Chicago, that has some of the most restrictive gun rights in the country. Now, how states and cities want to approach their gun rights, that's fine. But the Constitution is clear. Congress may make no law restricting the right to bear arms. Therefore, any law that has been passed by Congress is by definition unconstitutional and must be repealed. And I don't know why we still lay on these decisions from other courts that were led by Democrats legislating from the bench to say that these laws are unconstitutional, because they're not. They're punishments of law-abiding citizens because of what bad people do. The NFA came about because of the way the gangsters acted during the Prohibition era. And so they took machine guns away from people. Well, guess what? There were still a million people around the country that had fully automatic guns that weren't hurting anybody. So they punished the whole country for what the acts of a few were. So,
right. And as we saw in Japan, you know, there's no guns there, but oh my gosh, the ex-president was just assassinated by someone with a makeshift gun. So if people want guns, they're going to get guns, and if they want to kill people, they'll find a way to kill people.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, well, you used the example of Japan. There was the subway attacks in Japan also that were a mass killing event that was involved no guns. Even in Australia, they talk about their gun ban. Well, they just had a shooting, so apparently that doesn't work so well. But even going back to right after that ban was passed and they collected all the guns, then somebody decided they wanted to do a mass killing and they just burnt down a retirement home full of people. So people who want to do bad things will find other ways of doing bad things. Look at Timothy McVeigh, right? Like, he just used fertilizer. Can't take fertilizer away from people or we have no food. And he just used fertilizer to blow up a whole building and kill a bunch of people.
Yeah.
Crazy people are going to manage crazy things. There's a lot of stuff that's like completely normal stuff that can be used for these kind of events. Pretending that guns are the problem, it's wrong. The fact that there's no good guy with a gun to stop them before they can do mass casualties is the reason why there's mass casualty events.
All right. Let's talk about tech and the First Amendment. You've mentioned that social media immunity, Section 230, violates the First Amendment. How would you reform tech laws to protect free speech without destroying the tech economy in the Austin portion of your district?
So I wouldn't say that the tech immunity violates the First Amendment. I understand not wanting to punish a utility company for something that was done using their service. Okay. But what we have going on now is we have tech companies that are acting as publishers, saying they have editorial rights because they're publishers. Well, if you're a publisher, you're not a utility. You don't get the utility exemption from civil liability. So if you're Facebook, for example, and you're censoring speech, okay, you have a right to do that. But the minute you start censoring speech that's not illegal, you know, child pornography, all that stuff, if you're not blocking illegal speech and you're just blocking speech, you are acting as a publisher, in which case that's fine. If you want to be a publisher, you get to be a publisher. But you don't get to be a publisher and act like you're the electric company that has no input on what's being said.
Okay, so like canceling people for views that you disagree with. That means.
Yeah, exactly. The minute you do that as a tech company, you no longer have the immunity from civil liability. And that's all I'm saying. I'm not denying the right of tech companies to act as publishers. If they want to act as publishers, they by all means can. They just lose their utility status. But like you can't sue an electric company because somebody was engaged in cybercrime for providing the electricity for those crimes. You can't sue the internet service provider for providing the service for that crimes because they have no process to block what people are doing. They're just a utility.
Okay.
When you get to the social media companies, if they're making active decisions about how their service is used and who can use it, they're no longer a utility. Utilities don't get that choice. You pay your bill, you have your utility. And that's not what's going on with Facebook and Instagram and Snapchat, all these. They can take stuff away and they do not get the protection. Now, if they give up their editorial rights, then they preserve their utility protection.
Okay. And so, like, if you're breaking the law, they should definitely be able to do something about that. Like, say that people are spreading CSAM, which, if you don't know, is child sexual abuse material. That should everybody should agree that doesn't need to be on the internet anywhere, and they should do something about that. Now, I know YouTube is taking channels and demonetizing channels like Predator Poachers Long Island, Predator Poachers Southeast Texas. The people that are actually trying to put a stop to that kind of behavior, they're getting them off of their platform when they should be promoting that sort of thing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where I say, again, YouTube's acting as a publisher. They have every right to act as a publisher. They don't have a right to act as a publisher, but those organizations that they've kicked off that are actually doing good work that is not illegal, they should be able to sue YouTube for kicking them off.
Okay, I agree 100%.
Yeah, but they don't, because they say, oh, we're a utility. YouTube's not a utility, they're a publisher.
Yep.
So like Facebook, they either need to change how they filter content, or they need to give up their liability protections and prepare for a wave of lawsuits for the way they've damaged people over the last 20 years.
Very good. That's outstanding. Okay, let's move on to agricultural water rights. In your days growing up on the farm, you understand the value of land. How will you use your federal oversight to protect water rights of Texas 10 farmers from being bought out by expanding urban developers?
I actually don't think the federal government, that's a local issue. I talk constantly about the federal government interfering with the state's rights, and so to me that's a state issue. The federal government's only role in this should be limiting the impact of regulations that are affecting this area. Now, first of all, I do think, though, the federal government needs to ban any foreigners from owning land in the United States of America.
Well, we'll get to that. That's another question down the road.
But as far as the water rights issue, the biggest issue is the cities are stealing the water from the country. The country needs the water to feed their crops, and the biggest thing that the federal government can do to try and open things up a little bit, and to balance it out, is just to like get out of the way of like desalination plants. Like here in Texas, we should have tons of desalination plants, and we'd be able to turn all of West Texas green on top of East Texas if we got on that. But the
can you explain what a desalination plant is for those of our viewers who may not?
Yeah. So the desalination, it literally just removes the salt water from the water that they would get out of the Gulf of America. And here in Texas, because of the heat and the amount of sunshine we get, they could easily use thermal heat to, evaporate the water and recapture the vapor, turn it back into clean, pure water, completely clean, completely pure, and then pipe it over to wherever they need it for the cities, or even for expanding greenery going west across the state. There's plenty of water there. We just have to do it. But it's not really feasible. I don't want the federal government to do it, but it's not really feasible for private companies to do it when there's a $2 or $3 billion outlay at the beginning to even start a project, and then you have to wait a decade and a half to get approval. I think the last one that I heard about took like 18 years just to get approval, not to actually build it, just to get the approval. Meanwhile, in South Korea, they're building
California.
Yeah, and the South Korea, for example, builds to our same building standards. And for them, they're able to get a project from proposal to built in 3 years. You're telling me that we don't have the ingenuity to do it? And simple legislation on that would be, if it is a proven design, 30-day approval process. If it is a new design, you've got 365 days to find any problems. Well, now companies are going to be more likely to invest in these high-cost fields, because now they have a timeline when they can actually get to work and start recouping their investment.
All right. Let's talk about the border and fentanyl. As a Republican candidate, how does your fiscal conservative apply to border security? Do you support the massive federal spending required for a physical wall, or do you prefer a tech-based business solution?
The massive federal spending is a joke, because it's not massive federal spending. Right now we spend $70 billion on bases in other countries, and we act like $10 billion to finish the wall is a massive expense. It's not. Just finish the wall. Stop playing around. Like, the country to our south where we're building a wall has a wall on their southern border. So clearly it's a good idea. So we just need to stop playing with it. If they'd stop playing the games with it, it would have been done like 20 years ago, and all this that happened under Biden would never have happened. So, and then once you have a physical barrier there, then you can use electronics to free up the Border Patrol to actually go and apprehend the people that illegally cross the border. And like, if you didn't go through a port of entry when you came into the country, according to our law as it stands now, you don't have a right here. You don't have a right to petition for anything. If you cross the border without going through a port of an entry, you only have a right to say goodbye as we ship you off. So, yeah, the first stop is the physical barrier. I'm even an opponent of putting automated AI-driven machine gun turrets on the top, so we can make sure we don't miss any of the traffickers that are trying to get people across the border.
You said you're an opponent or a proponent?
Proponent.
Okay, because I thought I heard opponent, but I understand.
No,
I just wanted to clarify that.
I may have misspoken, but no, I'm a proponent. Like, physically impeding people from breaking into our country, bringing in poison, bringing in weapons, bringing in human trafficking victims. Yeah, it's a huge thing. And them getting here is not going to make their lives better, because most of them live worse lives than they had back in their own home country. So
you aren't opposed to either of them. You would like a mixture of the physical wall and tech-based solutions.
Yeah, I want the tech-based solutions, but I want the wall finished first.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, complete wall. And I don't say, well, in these places, any place you don't have wall, they're going to just go to the places where there aren't.
Right.
You know, if there's a cliff there, they'll put a ladder up the cliff. Like, it's not going to matter. You've got to put the wall there. It slows them down enough that you can use the tech solutions and the personal presence to catch the people before they get over the border.
Now, how would you propose, like, tunneling? How would you deal with tunneling? Yeah.
I think using technology, like, you can't really make those huge tunnels without creating any kind of like seismic disturbance. So I think if there are seismic sensors along the border, once we get the physical border up, then we can start implanting seismic sensors that will detect any sort of construction projects trying to make tunnels under the border.
Right, and we have that for them, like walking across too, right? They can.
Yeah, absolutely.
We have that now, but obviously it's not.
Yeah, it just needs to be more widespread. But you have to start with the physical barrier, and even finding tunnels ends up becoming easier, because then anybody who comes through is going to be coming through tunnels and stuff. So anyone you catch is going to be able to leave tunnels, instead of trying to sift through, like, 100 million people to find the million that went through, or but go through the 10 million people that Biden let in to find the 50 or 100,000 that came through tunnels. Instead, if the only people coming through are coming through tunnels, they're going to be able to lead you right back to the tunnels.
Right. Okay. So let's talk about the post-McCall leadership. Michael McCall held his seat for 20 years and was a leader in foreign affairs. How will your citizen legislature approach fill the vacuum of influence he is leaving behind on the national stage?
Well, considering our foreign policy has obviously been broken for what, 80, 90 years, I would make the argument that he wasn't much of a leader in foreign affairs anyway. Like, what did we get right over the 20 years he was in office in foreign policy? We sent a bunch of money to other countries that hate us. We got stuck in 2 20-year wars. Like, I just don't see like how his leadership was of any benefit. As a citizen legislator, my goal is going to be what's actually good for the United States of America. You know, paying for the protests that threw Yanukovych out in Ukraine, our government paying for that was not the kind of foreign affairs that we should be in. And the leaders that have been there for these 20 years, like trying to promote like they were doing some great thing for us, they weren't. They obviously weren't. So we need to stop pretending that they were. So yeah, I think, sorry, I think part of the issue is we keep pretending that people that just because they were there, they were doing good things. He wasn't doing good things for our country. Our state in the world was horrible under him. So I don't think we need to worry about replacing him.
Right. Well, that was the top 10 high impact questions that we had. Viewers, if you have any questions, please feel free to write them in, make a comment. I'll say what you say in the chat. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Hopefully we'll have more videos and interviews for you with the candidate Rob Brown. We have plenty more to go. We're not even partway done. We've only got 10 questions out of 100. But I just wanted to take a break to recognize the audience. I see we have some people here. Please stick with us. And again, put any questions that you may have for Rob Brown, candidate for the Congress of District 10 in Texas, and I'll ask him if I don't have any that you could think of. So now we're going to go into district-specific and local issue questions. What do you see as the top 3 issues currently facing the residents of Texas District 10? Top 3.
Well, right. I think right now probably the biggest one, especially on my end of the district, because I mean the district's over 200 miles across. So on my end of the district, our concern is the city's trying to get our water, and they're trying to use laws that made sure that you could use the water underneath your feet. They're trying to use those laws to give people the right to come in and steal our water. And I just can't, I can't fathom that. And then we also have like the issues with, like, we've got farmers struggling. Part of that is also brought about by water concerns, but part of it by like our cattle herds are at the lowest levels that they've been in, 80 years. And we need to get the trade barriers out of the way so the cattle ranchers can replace stock. The demand for beef is growing, and while it's growing, there's no real opportunity to replace the breeding heifers. So unless they get unless they're able to import a lot of extra heifers, then they're just going to be behind the ball, and we're going to end up seeing $50, $75 a pound steak. Like, I mean, that's just what's going to happen. The other issue that we have is actually the middleman syndrome. Every single one of these agricultural units, whether it's livestock, poultry, or vegetables and stuff like that, corn, for example. Corn, the farmers have been getting paid the same thing for like 30 years, but at the grocery store we're paying what, 5-6 times what we're being paid before. That's an easy example that demonstrates the middleman, the meat packers, the processing plants, the canneries. They're the ones that are like driving the prices. Well, the farmers are facing higher expenses, but they're not getting that extra income that's getting eaten up entirely by the canneries. So we need to, a big part of that is we need to break them up. There's like 4 major canneries for vegetables. There's like 3 major companies for meat packing. Like, I think the first part is to break up the monopolies. And then we need to return the ability to have local processors without the regulatory burden that's been imposed by the federal government that shut down a lot of those independent meat processing. The less options you have for something, the more the monopolies are going to be able to control both the price that they pay to the producers, the farmers, and the amount that you have to pay as the consumer. So getting the monopolies in the middle out of the way, and they hide in the middle, so they're never what people think of. When you see your prices going up, you don't think of the person who's processing the wheat, you think of the company who's selling you your cereal.
Right. No, I came across something similar to that just a couple of weeks ago. I've been getting eggs. I'm trying to. I kind of want to get started on an egg farm, but I bought a bunch of chickens from the feed store, the Tractor Supply store, and they were supposed to be all female chicks, but I ended up with 2 roosters out of the 10. One of the chicks died, didn't make it, which is pretty good because they say that out of 10 you're probably going to lose 2. So we didn't. However, 2 of them became roosters, and so I had bought 4 more after the one chick had passed, because they only let you buy them in like 2s, and so then another one of those was a rooster. So I ended up with 3 roosters and 7 chickens, and I didn't want the 3 roosters together with my hens, so I had kept the 2 leghorn roosters separate to themselves, and I needed to get rid of them. What I wanted to.
Okay, hold on. I'm gonna fix that one real quick, because you should at least remember this from cartoons. Foghorn, leghorn roosters.
It was a leghorn. Yes, I know. And I have an Orpington, a purple Orpington. I have two purple Orpingtons, and we were keeping those. So I decided to put the purple Orpington with the rest of the egg-laying hens, which is fine. We didn't actually find out that he was a rooster until one day we were out there and realized he was much bigger than the rest of them. But anyways, the fact of the matter is I need to do something with these 2 roosters that I had, because I don't have the space right now to go out and purchase more hens for them because you got to have I think it's something like 3 hens per each rooster. And I just didn't have that. So anyways, I called my local butcher, and it turns out butchers aren't butchers. They're meat markets. So I was trying to find someone that would process my roosters, because I wasn't going to do it, because I just don't know how, and I don't have that experience. But the only person
that's when you call your local congressional candidate, and I walk you through the process, and you just get it done on your own.
Right. So anyways, but yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, there's a middleman. There was one guy who would do it, but he was too far away, and he ended up closing down because he was trying to get his wife's business started. So I ended up getting rid of the roosters, and they're at a happy home now. So anyways, that being said.
Yeah, when I walk you through what you need to do next time you're ready to slaughter a chicken, you're gonna laugh at how simple it was and what a waste all that was.
Yeah, I looked.
You could have just had him for dinner that night.
I looked on YouTube, but whatever. It is what it is. I got it taken care of. So, with 2025 redistricting finalized, how will you represent the newly added areas versus the long-standing parts of the district?
Well, so the district was kind of actually created out of several different districts. We got a little bit of a piece that was part of Mike McCall's district. A bunch of it used to be part of District 8. Another piece of it used to be part of District 17. So I mean, really, the only leap that I have to make is the biggest city used to be in the 17th district where I lived before. The biggest city was Waco. Now the biggest city is Austin instead, and then we have Bryan College Station in the same district now. So those are the two big cities. So being interactive with the needs of what's going on in Travis County and what's going on in Brazos County, that's the bigger stretch, because all the other areas in the county are all rural. So I already get that. Like, I understand what the problems are and what the issues are we face. But I mean, it's not that hard. Like, I've been meeting with mayors, I've been meeting with community leaders to make sure that I understand what's going on and what their problems are over there. Like in the Bryan College Station area, one of the biggest things is the housing affordability. And that's because the massive growth at A&M over there. And then, like, of course, that's putting the strain on their, their water resources, driving up prices, their electricity resources going up prices. And basically, to me, that's just like getting the government the heck out of the way, whether it's at the city level, the state level. Why can't you have massive tracts of like tiny house communities? Because guess what? The modern people like minimalist lifestyles, and they should be able to choose to live in a tiny house. Yet a lot of these communities ban them, and it doesn't make any sense. They're not getting more square footage than they would have if they were living in a dorm at the college. So I think the government sets out with some high-minded ideals, and what they actually do is make it more cost prohibitive to build new housing. If people decide to live in tiny housing, or people decide to live in like small, tiny, like one-room studios and all this, that's none of the government's business. Back in the day, everybody used to just go build their own house, and the government had nothing to do with it. And yeah, the world didn't end because people were building their own houses without any input from government. So I think we can get back to that. And then the only time that there should be an approval process, it should be a very short approval process and very limited expenses to the process in order to build multifamily complexes. If we don't speed up the process, we're not going to fix the problem. It will also help there are a lot of illegal immigrants across the district, and getting them from competing for housing will help also.
Right.
But it's, for the most part, it's getting the government out of the way.
All right, we have a question from @NunyaBusiness, R9B, and he would like to ask, what's your take on the new shooting in Minneapolis, Minnesota?
Which new shooting? I saw there was another got shot. I didn't see any of the about it. If you're an illegal immigrant trying to get away with, trying to fight to get away from ICE, you've got a chance of getting shot. If you're an idiot trying to interfere with ICE, I think you should be shot. I wish we could just give them orders to say, hey, if they're blocking you from doing your job, just shoot them. Now, obviously, we can't actually do that, but I don't care. I just don't care. I'm tired of people with it. So if they get shot by a law enforcement officer while they're trying to impede the law enforcement officer, I'm perfectly okay with it. Like, it doesn't bother me at all. They FAFO'd.
Yeah, from my understanding, according to the Daily Wire, the man was interfering with ICE while he was armed. The situation is still evolving. This is coming from the Daily Wire. An armed individual was fatally shot by federal immigration agents in Minneapolis, and the firearm was taken by law enforcement on Saturday. The Department of Homeland Security confirmed to the Daily Wire that the suspect had a firearm with 2 magazines, but noted that the situation is evolving, with more details expected to emerge. According to Fox News, the shooting occurred around 26th Street and Nicollet Avenue. In a statement sent to the Daily Wire by DHS federal authorities said the incident occurred Saturday morning during a targeted operation for an illegal immigrant wanted for violent assault when another individual came up to Border Patrol agents with a semi-automatic handgun. The officers attempted to disarm the suspect, but the armed suspect violently resisted. More details on the armed struggle are forthcoming. Fearing for his life and the lives and the safety of fellow officers, an agent fired defensive shots. Medics on scene immediately delivered medical aid to the subject, but was pronounced dead at the scene. So, like you said, he FAFO'd.
Yeah, isn't it funny how I knew absolutely nothing about the new shooting, but I called exactly why the person got shot? Like,
Right. And
it's not hard to figure out. Now, I think that we need to I think that we need to do a little something more about this. And what I have in mind for that is I do think that we need to start the local governments, the state governments, the city governments. They have no authority to try and overrule federal law. They just don't have the authority. So I think it's time that we go and arrest J.B. Pritzker. I think it's time that we arrest Governor
Jim
Walz.
Walz.
I think it's
yeah.
I think it's time that we arrest the mayors of all these cities for the very clear intent to illegally impede federal law enforcement. And and I'm willing to bet that we can turn that into conspiracy as soon as we arrest them, because I'm sure it's going to show that the government was, or the local governments were conspiring with each other, which turns it into RICO and conspiracy and all that. I also think that the people that are funding these organizations, they need to be found, and they need to be locked up too for funding an insurrection. Democrats shouldn't be complaining because, you know, they're the ones that were so upset about a fake insurrection. So now that there's real insurrection going on, they should 100% support throwing all these clowns in jail.
Okay.
And I can pass legislation once I'm in Congress that makes it easier to do this stuff. I mean, the laws already exist. I actually, one of the things that I think I can do that's actually going to get some movement here would be to impeach Pam Bondi, because I think she's a tool of the deep state at this point. She's been in office for a year and nobody is getting arrested. So,
all right. Well, at None Your Business R9B, thank you for your question, and I see your comments here. We will get to them later. Right now, I need to continue on with the interview. How has the Supreme Court upheld new map affected the balance of urban, suburban, and rural representation in Texas District 10?
oh my God, it's horrible for the people in the rural end of the district where I live, because I mean, just the field in this race like shows it. It's all a bunch of Austin elites running for the office, and we don't need that. We've literally had that for the last 20 years. We don't need another Austin elite representing us, especially since the one that's got the endorsement of President Trump, and once he endorsed, basically everybody in the Republican Party is endorsing the guy. But Donald Trump didn't talk to any of the candidates in the race. He just did a blind endorsement because the guy's already in Elon Musk's pocket. And so he, you know, Elon's his friend. Elon asked him to endorse this guy, and he did. I mean, I can see exactly how that played out. But yeah, no, like it's a horrible impact. We also went from being like a solid 50% red district to the district being, I want to say, 40% up and down the ballot Democrat, 30% up and down the ballot Republican, and then 30% swing. So that means 30% of the people that voted, yeah, Trump got 58%, but 30% of the people that voted for Trump, or actually, I guess it would be close to 50% of the people voted for Trump, voted blue somewhere on the ballot in a contested race. So that makes it really dangerous for this race, that Democrats only need to get 10.1% to swing their way, whereas we've got to get 20.1% to swing our way. And I think we've got a bunch of candidates in this race that are really easy to hit. That, yeah, it's sketchy. So beyond that, when you listen to all the other candidates in the race talk, they don't actually have a clue what anybody in the rural part of the district needs. They don't have a clue. So they're not going to legislate for us. They'll do an occasion, you know, pitch some little thing to the rural parts of the district and pretend like they're representing us. No, you know, when we're struggling to pay bills, like throwing us money that was our money to begin with doesn't do anything to help us. So I think pretty much everybody else in the race, because they have that city mentality, their thought is that everything can be fixed by government, and 80 years of history says nothing can be fixed by government.
Okay, what is your plan for physical presence and accessibility in a district that stretches roughly 200 miles from Austin to Crockett?
Oh, so okay, so existing right now for Mike McCall's district, he does have his office there in Austin. There's another office in Huntsville that I believe would follow this district. There's an office in Brazos, or in Brazos County over Bryan College Station area. There's that one there. But I think I'd be adding in probably another one over here on Crockett, so it gets this side of the district, and probably adding in one like over in Giddings, so people don't have to drive all the way to Austin, because like it skips 100 miles over there. So I think just putting a couple smaller offices with some caseworkers in there, so it's easier. And then the fact that I'm going to make a point to make sure I do town halls all across the district the entire 2 years that I'm there for the term. And I'm going to make sure to actually do stuff like this, where people can reach out and, you know, interact with me. And then I'm going to be accessible. I don't believe most people in Congress even bother talking to their constituents once they're elected. And well, they don't bother talking to their constituents while they're running for office. Whereas I've knocked on thousands of doors personally, because I'm trying to talk to as many of my constituents as possible.
Okay, with the district including parts of College Station and Austin's tech hub, what specific policies will you support for higher education and research funding?
Nothing. Absolutely nothing. It is like a local university should not be paid for by the federal government.
Okay, and research funding?
But that's across the board. No.
Okay.
What research are they going to do there that is of interest to every single person in the United States? Nothing. Like they have plenty of research. They have plenty of research money that they get from their endowments. We do not need the federal government to say, okay, well, we're going to set aside, you know, X amount of money, because it's going to go to all the colleges. They're not going to unfairly do one college over another. They're all going to get it, and the money's going to be wasted. If we need to do research grants for local colleges, it needs to come from the state government, not the federal government. The federal government has no ability to oversee the 200,000 colleges in this country that ask for grants for research. No, it just needs to stop. It's just another point of grift. And it's kind of funny that every time we do give a research grant to a university, the president of the university, now I'm not saying specifically A&M, but like I can think of at least 3 different times where Ivy League universities, they got some money for research, and a week later, the president of the university pops up with a yacht or a new mansion. Like, the money's fungible. They have the money for the research. They just take the government money and then give themselves bonuses.
Okay. How will you address infrastructure bottlenecks, specifically the Giddings Crossing and bottlenecks in Austin and Bryan College Station?
Okay, so the Bryan College Station, like a lot of that, I don't know that we have an interstate corridor, but the U.S. highways that go through there need to be expanded to help deal with the growing traffic patterns and whatnot over there. And I think a lot of that can be because, like, I'm looking at a lot of the infrastructure projects going on across the district. And in a lot of places, they're just tearing up the roads that are there, replacing it with the exact same road, making absolutely no difference, but wasting a ton of money when that money could have been shifted to actually widening places where there's expanding traffic, or creating, bypasses that can accelerate. And then I also think that, like, here in Texas, like, we don't have the earthquakes and stuff. We need to get a lot more comfortable with building raised highways and find a lot cheaper ways of doing it, because, like, if you're shoving the same people through the same amount of space, it doesn't matter how many times you rebuild it. It's never going to work if you can't add more lanes. And we need to just be able to build up so we can add lanes. Like, it alleviated a lot of traffic just going through the cities with those loops going up. Okay, I don't. So on the over on the Austin end of it, like, I mean, they're already working on expanding those freeways, different in construction. I don't know what the solution is, because a lot of it's at the state level, but maybe I'll be able to get access to the planners at the state level, because a lot of the issues with these projects taking forever is they just plan them poorly, and I think that they don't directly communicate with the local areas to make sure that they're building stuff, because basically they build for the traffic that we have now. They finished the project in 15 years, and that's not the traffic that we had when they started. So somebody just has a complete lack of vision too when they're planning this stuff.
Right.
Did I answer the question? I got kind of on a meandering rant there.
Yeah, no, I think you're. I mean, it looks like Compelling Rod 0COVSNU said something that I don't quite understand on what is that, Twitch? Viewers streamboo.com removed the space at R5PSSBCU.
Oh, no, you know what it is? Yeah, that's a spam.
Oh, it is. Okay. Okay. All right. So we'll move on to the next question. What federal resources will you fight for to protect rural landowners' water rights against urban expansion?
So again, like the water resources, that's a local area level, because it does not affect everybody else in the other 49 states. So it is not a federal issue. It is a state issue. I will say, though, the federal government, again, going back to the desalinization and all that, Texas needs more water. So they need more capture programs. But again, that's like state level, because it doesn't benefit everybody else in the country. So what the federal government can do is get out of the way of local water projects. As far as how the water is distributed, that's not actually like to my office. It shouldn't be funded by the federal government, and the federal government should make sure that the regulations are out of the way. I would love to like do a constitutional amendment banning environmental studies.
Okay. How do you plan to support logistics and transportation industry, a major employer of Texas 10 residents?
Well, I mean, the big for logistics, the biggest thing you can do is make sure that the products are still flowing. So everything you can do to get out of the way of business. I do think we need to do some work. Like, oh, you mentioned the area around Giddings, and so this kind of ties in as well. We need to make sure that the private industry and the government are working together to meet the infrastructure needs. Like the interchange in Giddings, you got a U.S. highway where it gets blocked by the trains 27 times a day. And during the evacuations after Katrina, like it created a nightmare because people were backed up for like hundreds of miles outside of Giddings because they couldn't get through the evacuation area. Well, that's one where, as it's been existing for the last 20 years, it should have been a combined effort between the railroads, the FEMA, and the transportation department to get that fixed. And when they did this big, beautiful BS bill, or no, the Build Back Better BS bill, not the big, beautiful bill, although I've got some issues with it too, but with the infrastructure bill, they didn't like specify any of the things that were actually problems. They were just specifying that the money has to be sent, and they sent it out to this, and then they didn't address any of the stuff that's real concerns, like evacuation rate. So yeah, so I think the federal government can work as partners when it comes to stuff that's interstate, but if it's within the state, get the federal government out of it. We're $40 trillion in debt. The government needs to have its hands out of as much as possible.
All right. What steps will you take to attract tech innovation to the Austin adjacent counties while ensuring the benefits reach rural communities?
Nothing. I don't want any tech coming here from California at all.
Okay.
But again, it would be a state issue too, because it doesn't, the federal government, the United States of America, all the other states, because I got to be fair. Like, I don't want to be burdened Like it just sounds like, oh, I don't want to do anything for our state. No, that's not it. If we're doing stuff for our state, we're going to have to do the stuff for the other 49 states. And I think better off we just do it ourselves and relieve ourselves of the burdens of the other 49 states.
Okay. So it's
not a federal thing.
That the innovation come from inside the state rather than outside the state.
Yeah, I think it should be private sector. If you're doing the innovation and blah, 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 okay, then do it. Run your business however you want. Stop begging. Like, I'll give you an example. One of the small towns was looking at building a data center, and they were actually going to accommodate them. But then they started dictating like how much they were going to pay for electricity, how much they were going to pay for the land. And if they didn't get this, this, and this, they weren't going to build it. And it's no, you know what? No, if your business is viable, you can support your own costs. You can produce your own power. You can find a location for the rest of your water, and you cannot be a burden on the community you're going to come in, because guess what? You're not that much of an addition. You're actually going to create more problems than you're going to solve. So just be a business, be a good corporate citizen, and cover your own expenses, and stop expecting these rural communities to pay your way so you can grace them with your presence.
Sounds good. Now, how will you address the closing of rural hospitals and the general lack of healthcare access in the eastern counties?
So, yeah, well, the issue is lack of people, and they can't afford to hire more like actual patient care people because they have a ridiculous regulatory burden as far as like monitoring and charting and tracking and paperwork. If you look at the fastest growing parts of expenses in healthcare, it's actually administrative is number one. Over 50% of the price increases. You still got about 10% of the price increase. The price increases are also from liability. But what you have is between the administrative requirements, and then you also have the problems with the pharmaceutical companies and the medical equipment manufacturers constantly changing the products that they sell, so they never come off of patent to allow other paper to make cheaper versions. I don't know why patent got stuck in my brain, but it did. So these are all things that add to the rising cost. And so the issue that you have in the private communities, it's almost impossible for a single care provider to actually afford to have an office. You know, your family doctor, where he was the only doctor in the office, that's almost impossible now because of the burdens put on them by the city, the county, the state, Medicaid, Medicare, insurance companies, the federal government. Like, it makes it so like the burden to even start is so high, it would take them decades to like even recoup their money if they're ever able to, because it's an ever-ending like spiraling increase of costs just to keep up with regulatory burden and the monopolistic and just plain dirty practices of the medical equipment manufacturers and the companies. So you need to get some regulation in there that pairs back, I don't know, simplified charting that applies to everybody, because like most of the people asking for questions don't even need the questions answered. It has nothing to do with monitoring. What the federal government does is, instead of just establishing best practices that they expect people to follow, they instead try and micromanage and micro record. And it just makes a unsustainable business environment. And yeah, simplifying the regulations for the healthcare, and getting some tort reform so the malpractice insurance costs aren't so bad. Expanding the ability of places to build, so there are more options in commercial areas, so that's not a huge insurmountable obstacle. I mean that's what's going on. It's just too expensive for small providers to open up in small cities, and so we get stuck with these big corporations, and then also not having them to eat the money from all the illegal aliens going to the emergency rooms would help too. But you know, that's another part of the story. It will help with the problem if we just get rid of the illegals.
Yeah, the illegals is a big issue, and that was like one of the many reasons President Trump was reelected into office.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and that even for the
it affects
Hispanics and the
everything.
Black American, and even for the Hispanics and the Black Americans, that even the people that came here legally who are of minority descent agree with that sentiment. So
yeah, 90% of them are a burden, not a benefit. So I just say kick them all out, and then they can reapply and prove they're going to be a benefit. So,
right,
but yeah, it's impacting the healthcare too, because they're going in, getting treated, and not paying.
yes,
and Americans have to pay the gap.
Next question.
Yep.
What is your plan to handle the housing affordability crisis in high growth areas like Austin and the Brazos Valley?
Like again, getting government out of the way is the best thing that you can do. Like
meaning like regulation, permitting, all of it. Like it's ridiculous. And then this idea that the government thinks it has the right to tell people how they can build on their own land is just beyond me. The United States people are not subject to government. Government is subject to the people. So yeah, you have no right to tell me what I can do on my land. And if somebody wants to build 100 units in housing development, okay, great. So give them a 10-day approval process if they bring plans in for an already approved design. Especially in these cities, they're already required to hook up to city water and city sewage. So you don't have the water impact problems. You don't have the environmental impact problems. And when you got to put people places, yeah, you're going to lose some green belt. You're going to lose some farmland. But that's what you have to do because you got to keep building. And then they can actually, I would suggest incentivizing people to redevelop some of the older parts of the cities, you know, kind of the gentrification. I don't know, maybe give them a little bit of tax break the first 5 years or whatever. But that's, again, local level. At the federal level, we should have nothing to do with it because it is not the federal government's problem how they're building houses in Austin or Brazos County. My goal as a legislator is to make sure there's nothing in the federal government that's standing in the way. And I don't want the federal government like paying to build stuff because here we got in Crockett, Texas, the population was pretty small. Now they've got so much government and like USDA and HUD housing and all that over here that like something like half the voters don't even pay property taxes, but they decide how the money's spent. Like it's insane. And the Democrats use the federal programs to get people that are always going to vote Democrat because they're living off the federal government and moving them into the small towns so they can take over the electorate. Okay.
So, yeah, I don't want the federal government involved. It all comes down to scale. The federal government cannot keep track of what happens with all this stuff, so they just need to get out of it.
I concur. What is your stance on federal energy infrastructure projects such as pipelines passing through the district?
Yeah, again, why are federal government doing that? Like, the oil companies want to build a pipeline, let them build a pipeline. If the water companies want to build a pipeline from all their desalination plants, so they'll be able to build when we get all the restriction out of the way, so they can pipe that water into West Texas and turn all their 180-acre parcels into giant subdivisions. Go for it. Like, I mean, there's work that needs to be done about the routing and the piping to make sure that you're respecting landowner rights, and that again, that's a local issue. But the federal government, like energy, is like a private thing. The federal government shouldn't be there. Now, what we should be doing though is getting out of the way as far as the regulation at the federal level. Like delete it all. Like just Control Alt delete all of the regulations. Throw all the books away. Like. All this stuff is happening at a local level. If they build a pipeline, it's going to be going from the Permian Basin over to East Texas, so it can be shipped out or refined here and then shipped out as products like that. What the hell does the federal government have to do with any of that? That is all Texas. So Texas should decide it, and Texas should get the permit, and that's it. Like, it's not federal government. Like, main point of my campaign is almost everything that almost everything the federal government does isn't really the business of the federal government.
Absolutely, I agree with you. The common sense building, I think the federal government is so sorry, excuse me, I inhaled some of my own saliva. The federal government is more concerned with environmental aspects of things than anything. And I think that it boils down to just common sense, Like obviously you don't want to just go around spilling oil everywhere, We want there's a way to
Right.
do things, but we don't need the federal government. Like you said, that can be a state issued thing. I agree with you.
Yeah, people forget the federal government was not supposed to be involved in anything that didn't equally impact every single American.
Right.
And when you look at the stuff that they're doing, like, oh, well, they're doing like food all across the country. Yeah, but that's not affecting every single American, other than it's stealing from some to give to others. And like, if you're too lazy to work, I don't care if you starve.
Right.
So people that are actually disabled and in need, I'm okay with taking care of them, but that should still be a state, city, county issue and not a federal issue. But people that refuse to work, nobody's obligated to hold them up. But hey, how about we do this? We'll take we're like sitting on an hour and a half. What question are you on, Brad?
13. We're going into talk about veterans.
No, what question?
13.
Oh wow, we got a long way to go.
Yeah.
So how about we take 5 so you can go get a drink of water for your choking thing there.
Oh no, I'm fine now.
And
but yeah, we could take a break.
No, but we'll take 5. Give everybody that's watching a chance to go to the bathroom or whatever. Get a drink, get a snack, whatever. We'll take a 5-minute break and we'll be right back.
All right.
Back.
We're back here with Texas District 10 congressional candidate Rob Brown, getting government out of your life, your business, and your wallet. We're on question 22. Now we're going to 23 of the most in-depth interview with a congressional candidate you will ever see. So, Rob, how will you advocate for the large population of veterans and military families in Central and East Texas? I happen to be one of those, but I'm not in your district.
Yeah. Well, obviously you know what I went through with my dad when he passed and everything that he went through with the VA. So there needs to be a huge shakeup at the VA because it doesn't work. We need to get it to where they can just get care in their communities without having to drive to one of the cities that has a VA facility. So, I mean, if we're going to have the VA acting as a single payer service, okay, great, but give them the choice where they go. We also need to look at like the amount of veterans are on the street. There's 330,000 veterans on the street across the district. And I've already proposed that we pass legislation that the people or the countries where we have bases have to pay 50% of the upkeep of those bases so we can bring $33 billion back home to make sure that we have facilities for those veterans on the street to stay. And we have to acknowledge that the reason that they're on the street is usually because they have mental health problems. A lot of times they're medicating their PTSD with drugs and alcohol. So we need to have drug treatment. We need to have mental health facility services. And then we also need to have job training because a lot of them were soldiers that came out of high school at 18. They had no job training of any sort. And then they come back and there's no place for them to fit in civil society. So considering they spend like $3 billion a year total on it, I think $33 billion, we'd be able to get them all off the streets and have plenty of resources on an annual basis to make sure that we're helping them get back to life, not just temporarily off the street.
Yes, that's near and dear to my heart because I am a disabled veteran and I went through some of those adversities that you said yourself, like self-medicating for PTSD and job training for those people. So yeah, I totally respect that and can appreciate what you plan on doing. What specific disaster preparedness or recovery funding will you prioritize given the history of Texas of extreme weather?
Okay, so I want to say I differentiate between multi-state events and local events. FEMA funding should not go to recovery for local events because, again, it's only supposed to be nationwide. I'd even argue the states need to have their own emergency management funds with hurricanes. The Texas has a huge fund, and they probably need less help from other states than some of the other states that have smaller economies. But this idea, again, that the federal government is responsible for everything is just insane. Yeah, we should have FEMA funds to where we can lend money to the states if they don't have the money to recover from an emergency. But the idea that it's the job of somebody in Texas to help recover from a fire in California is completely insane. Just as insane as it is to say that somebody in Wyoming needs to be paying to help us recover from a hurricane here in Texas. Like we know where the state is. We know it's in a hurricane zone. We know we're going to get them like every 10 years. Like it's almost like clockwork. So I think the states can plan for what they know is coming better.
So just like California should know that they're going to have wildfires every summer.
Well, they wouldn't have wildfires if their hippies hadn't shut down the logging industry because the logging companies would have maintained the fires and they wouldn't have spread to begin with.
Right.
And it wouldn't be as dry as brittle if they hadn't drained in the 20s. The Democrats that were in charge at the time in the 20s went and drained the largest lake in North America to make more farmland so they can have vineyards and stuff there. No, it's like, we're not. States are not responsible for other states' bad planning.
Well, I think Reagan said it best. The thing that people should fear is I'm from the
I'm
government
from
and
the
I am here to
government.
help.
I'm here to help. Yep.
Yeah.
Because guaranteed they're not going to do anything. And then you look at what happened. Federal money did go for the fires, and not one house has been rebuilt. So
Yep. Because of
reason that should be,
regulation.
yeah. So yeah, I don't think the federal government should be that involved. If they are, like, if they can do rapid responses, fully mobilize the military and the National Guard to help, okay, great, I'm all okay with that. But just like pumping money into the states because there's an emergency that they knew was going to happen, no. Like
No.
what's the unique disaster that people have gotten hit with that they didn't know they would get hit with? Even in North Carolina, and I was okay with rapid response going in there, but they didn't. The soldiers at the military base nearby weren't deployed to help. You know what I mean? We can help with search and rescue. We got a military that we don't actually fight a lot of wars. I'd like to bring a lot of our military back to this country because I mean, it's weird to me. They write laws that the military can't operate on U.S. soil. We're the only country in the world where the military doesn't exclusively operate on their own soil. So,
And the
yeah,
military is there to defend the soil.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. What is the first district specific project you would seek funding for through federal appropriations?
Nothing.
Okay, so to sum it up for your district specific and local issues, you want the state to be responsible for their local issues.
Yes, I would
there
like
for
the
federal.
the state, the state, the county, the cities. My job in federal office is going to be make sure the federal government is not in the way of what the state needs to do.
So if people want these changes or are concerned with almost most of these questions that I asked, then they need to take it up with their local representation and the legislature.
Yeah, absolutely. Because like I said, even then, like, I don't know that it's like being done well. Like, I look at all the infrastructure projects that came out of the infrastructure package, and like all they're doing is wasting money. Like, they're rebuilding the same road exactly the way it was to begin with. That's a waste of money.
Okay.
So I think it should be dialed down. I think the better result is going to be to get the debt paid off so we can stop charging people employment taxes, so the money circulates in the local economies, and the local economies have more money for the projects that they need.
Getting government out of your life, your business, and your wallet.
Yeah, isn't it funny how it all kind of comes back to that?
All right, that's great. I'm glad we could sum that up. Now let's get into agriculture and the rural economy.
Mm-hmm.
How will you ensure the 2026 Farm Bill prioritizes family-owned farms and ranches in Texas District 10?
I'm not going to pretend it does. It needs to be repealed because most of that money is going to go to big corporate farms, and it's going to go to the wineries and vineyards in California. And it's a bad idea. Subsidies are always a bad idea. They always get abused, and they never go to the people that really need them. The better thing that we can do is, like I said, break up the monopolies in the middle that are keeping the farmers from getting paid more for their products, and that are, bottlenecking them into what they have to grow, like the way the soybean farmers got bottlenecked into growing soybeans for China, and then it just got turned off all of a sudden. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, interfering with the free market is just not a good idea, and that goes everywhere from manufacturing to farming. Like, I get the government out of the way, and let the farmers do it. Now, if the states have specific plans for what they think is going to benefit them, okay, great. The states can do that, because again, it's not the burden of Wyoming to take care of Texas farms. It's not the burden of New York to take care of Texas farms. It's the burden of Texas to take care of Texas farms. And the federal government is just way too overreaching. We got 5,000 agents. The government ever supposed to be ending the governments and doing no plans. It doesn't work. So that's why we're looking at.
Go ahead.
No, I mean, it's just the thing we can to get the federal government out of the way. That's the biggest issue we have.
Sort of like how we subsidize all these other countries' defense while they're going around spending at least their 2% of GDP that they're supposed to be using for their defense on socialized healthcare.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. What is your plan to address rising land costs and property taxes that are forcing multi-generational ranchers to sell their land?
Okay, well, property taxes need to go away entirely, but again, that's a state issue. The states are the ones that issue property taxes. But I would recommend to Governor Abbott and everybody going to the state house and the state senate that you need to get rid of property taxes. You can replace it with a 1 or 2% sales tax. You can easily replace those revenues. And I've seen the numbers at some of these cities, and as they institute, like it's funny. Giddings is an example. I know that they did the same thing in Bee Cave. They doubled their revenue with the sales tax. Well, hey, how about if you adjust, instead of spending more money just on that, 1% sales tax, and completely replace your revenue, so the people would be able to spend the money they saved on their property taxes on their home or in their community, and then you're creating more business, more jobs, all of that. Like, get the government out of people's pockets, federally, state, local. I know you need to run the government, but you can do it at a consumption basis. And the value, the extra added value of having stuff funding by consumption tax is if the economy's bad and people are struggling, their taxes are going to go back down anyways. The government just has to follow through responsibly and cut the spending.
Okay. I'm not sure how you would be able to do this, but how will you expand high-speed rural broadband to the dead zones in the agricultural parts of the district?
Well, I can tell you, I've driven around with my Starlink. There's no such thing as a dead zone. So you can have broadband anywhere. So again, just stay out of the way. Like Elon Musk worked that out using private industry. Yeah, just stay out of it. Like, if we were going to do anything, we should have stuck with the program that they paid for. That was supposed to be Starlink, but then Biden got butthurt by Elon Musk and decided to cancel that contract. And what's the result? We spent billions of dollars and nobody got internet. So leave it to the private sector. They'll figure it out. If there's a demand, it'll get there. And with the more we get expansions of the satellite-based broadband providers, the more the costs will come down. And yeah, I'm sorry. I grew up on a farm. Broadband would have done no good for me. So I don't think it's really even that much of a concern. But we got to pretend that most of the state people have broadband through their phones anyway. So there's not really that many dead zones where there are actually people. And the people that are living where there aren't people, they're living there on purpose.
Right. What federal actions will you take to address persistent drought and water scarcity for Central Texas farmers?
Again, we got to stop feeding the cities from the farmland, because it's affecting the water table. It's affecting the reservoirs. They need to get desalination going here. We're a coastal state. And my biggest thing is to get the government out of the way so they can pop up as many of these desalination plants as quick as they can, so they can start piping water inward like crazy. Oh, you might make the argument that that's an awful lot of water needed, blah, blah, blah. Okay, the entire Middle East is provided water almost exclusively from desalination. It's 90% over there. And it's what, 0.1% in Texas? No, we just need more water, so they need to start getting it out of the Gulf of America that's right there. It's time to do it, and it's time to make sure that the government's not standing in the way. They've got 24 designs for desalination plants that have already been approved, and then we need to put a cap on the approval process for the federal government, because they are getting paid to drag these things out, and it needs to be the opposite. A bureaucrat's job is to make sure that they have work, and we need to change that mentality.
Okay. Now, we were talking earlier about land ownership and foreign entities, so this question goes back to that. I know you wanted to get into that. So do you support stricter limits or a ban on foreign ownership of Texas agricultural land, and why?
Yeah, there's 20 countries in the world that actually allow foreigners to buy land. If you got a foreign company and you want to lease the land from the owner, okay, you can lease the land from the owner, but you can't buy it. Nobody from outside the country gets to buy a piece of this country. It's just insane, the even idea of it. And I think we have the same issue with multinational conglomerates. If over 50% of your business interests are outside the United States, you can't buy land here either. And nobody should be able, none of these corporations should be able to buy land unless they are going to farm on it. You don't get to buy farmland and then not farm it. You don't get to just hold it up and keep it. No, done with that. It just needs to be stopped.
Okay. What is your position on right to repair legislation for farmers using high-tech machinery?
You know, we've got just about every technology goes through a little bit of this. Like they did it with the printers where you have to buy the certain ink, and they did it with cars. If you didn't use their parts, then and their repair shops, and like it, if you bought the equipment, you paid for the equipment. You have every right to repair your equipment however you want. And we need to. I think the one thing that we do need to look a little bit at, if maybe they just need to stop being greedy on the parts, because I think they intentionally make the parts to break, so you have to go back to them and buy the parts. So when you lock them into buying the parts from, when they in the auto industry, when they got out of being able to tie people into getting their parts directly from Ford and Chevy and all that, that's when the American cars started getting more reliable again, because making the car break down was no longer a reliable income stream for them, if that makes sense.
Right. Well, it also allows for parts manufacturers to sell those parts to other companies, so that could make that could increase small businesses like auto parts stores.
Absolutely.
You know, for instance, so you could have a tractor supply or tractor parts supply stores. So that could help provide jobs and help build the economy.
Yeah, but I
Not
mean,
to mention make it more affordable for the farmers to repair their machinery.
Yeah, but I mean, if you require, if you make something and you require you be the only one that's allowed to repair it, you're no longer incentivized to make sure it's reliable.
Right. Unless you have warranty, right?
No, but that's what I'm saying though. Like, if you're the only one that can repair it because of the terms of your warranty or whatever, if you're the only one that they can come to for repairs, then the item breaking down becomes a constant income stream for you, instead of just building one that never breaks down.
Right. Oh, you mean kind of like we don't have a
McDonald's
cure
ice
for
cream
cancer
shop.
because it doesn't benefit the pharmaceutical companies?
Yeah, I'm willing to bet that like half the diseases we have would be cured tomorrow if we could take away the pharmaceuticals companies' ability to make money off of treating the cancer.
Right. How will you protect ranchers from federal grazing fee increases or restrictive land management policies?
Well, I'm kind of against the federal government owning a bunch of land anyways, so I kind of think it needs to be returned to the states, and states can return it to the counties, and then it ends up being local. So if there is some sort of fee required, the local community is collecting it, and it's going to benefit the local community. Again, I want to get the federal government out of almost everything. Ideally, I would say 90% of the federal government would be gone if I got my way.
I think I know the answer to this question. Do you support federal subsidies for smart irrigation systems to conserve the Colorado River?
Absolutely not. I don't support federal subsidies for anything. If the technology and the business, is there, they'll figure it out on their own. Let the free market operate. And yeah, I don't think we really need it. What we do need in Texas is more water, which they can accomplish with desalinization, which, yeah, we've talked all through that one.
So judging from that statement, this question, I think I know the answer to. I think you're going to say get out of the way, but you tell me if I'm wrong. How can the federal government better support small businesses in the rural economy?
One, we need to end the taxes for small businesses entirely. If you got less than 50 employees, then you don't really have the extra income. You need 100% of your profits so you can buy more equipment, so you can like hire more people. And then once you cross that threshold that you're not dog, Once you cross that threshold, then you have the ability to maybe pay that. But eventually I want to get rid of all business taxes once we get this debt paid down anyways, because like all of business taxes is a replicated tax that's ultimately paid by the consumer. So if you tax 8 companies, what you really did is tax the end consumer 8 times. So yeah, get out of the way with regulations and get rid of the taxes.
Right. What is your stance on the Texas Doge initiative and its potential impact on rural federal spending?
I'm dubious. And the reason I say I'm dubious is because I watched the federal government go through Doge, and then I watched the congressman refund all of the stuff that Doge cut. So I'll believe it when I see it. I think it should be necessary. But you know how you like keep somebody from defrauding a $100 billion food initiative? You don't have the $100 billion food initiative to begin with. The government needs to get out of people's way. The government tries to find new reasons to exist. They need to stop that. They need to try and find ways to not exist so they're not impeding on people. Like literally, I would be okay if all we had was police, fire department, and the military, and the government did nothing else. Because guess what? If private companies wanted people to get to their business, they will pay to build the roads. Like that's just fact, because that's how it worked for the first 150 years of our country. Like the first of our like impacted gravel highways that we had going in between states, those were paid for by merchants who needed smoother roads to transport their goods. Like the federal government didn't do that. The original expansion of the railroad was driven by the railroad companies, not the federal government. Like, so like private industry will provide what everybody needs because that's what we need. So we just need to keep working on shrinking down the government at the federal, the state, and the city and the county levels until they're not doing anything. You know what? Over here where I'm at, my road's gravel and it gets graded like once a year. But guess what? My city doesn't charge us any property taxes. So I don't care. I just don't expect much. You know, it'd be funny if we'd stop complaining about what the government does if we stopped expecting them to do stuff for us.
Right. When we are the reason for their existence.
Yeah.
All right. So now we're going to go on to the economy, jobs, and taxes.
Mm-hmm.
Do you support extending the 2017 tax cuts and Jobs Act provisions set to expire soon?
Well, I think they actually already renewed that. But yeah, I'm always okay with cutting taxes as long as you cut the spendings. My issue with all these tax cuts is they don't cut the spending. So all they're really doing is shifting the tax burden to debt, which means we're going to pay it later with interest. No, I'm not okay with that. Like fake tax cuts don't do any good. If you didn't cut the spending, if we aren't, if we haven't gotten rid of the deficit, any tax cut is a lie.
All right.
You're just shifting the taxes to later.
What is your specific plan to reduce inflation and lower the daily cost of groceries for Texas families?
Well, step one, get rid of the Federal Reserve because their continuous printing of money is responsible almost entirely for the inflation rate's like 2.7% right now, annualized, and the Fed prints 4.4% more money every year. So like the prices would actually be deflating if the federal government wasn't making your money worth less by printing more. So you want prices going down? Okay, stop the federal government from doing that. Well, the only way to stop the federal government from doing that is to stop the U.S. government from issuing debt, because like when they issued the debt, they need treasury bonds. Treasury bonds pay a yield of about 4.4%. So they have to, wow, funny that like equals exactly how much more money they're printing. So literally they're printing money to pay the interest, which actually makes the money you have in your pocket less valuable. So yeah, ending the Fed is step one. Step two is get the federal government out of everything. Housing prices have been artificially propped up because the federal government pumps $200 billion a year in loan guarantees into the real estate market, propping up prices that aren't realistic. If the price is too expensive, nobody's supposed to buy it. And then the price comes down. Like, that's how the free market works. But they're pumping money into the real estate. They're pumping money into food, subsidizing all these different industries, and not at the right points. If there was going to be subsidies, you could do them smartly and actually make a difference to, like, instead of handing out cash, instead, like, okay, you need better equipment, boom, we'll have the equipment manufactured and send in the equipment. But handing out cash just drives inflation because they prop up artificially high prices. So yeah, get the government out of everything. That'll take care of the inflation. We'll actually probably start seeing deflation at a slow rate.
Okay. Should there be federal incentives or tax credits to encourage domestic manufacturing in the logistics sector?
So what the federal government should be doing to encourage manufacturing here in the U.S. is understanding how international trade works and why we're getting undercut and people aren't manufacturing here. Like, I like to use the example, say this remote control costs is $100 retail. So our distributors sell it to the retailers for $50 because they bought it from the manufacturers for $25. So the actual cost of manufacturing on that is $12 because it's usually half that. So they manufacture it for $12. The foreign company manufactures it for $1, and they sell it into our market at $10. Well, guess what? This one's going to be more expensive, and it multiplies at every level of the supply chain. So by the time you get it down there, it's way more expensive than the one that was manufactured abroad. And they're only making $12 on it to begin with, the original manufacturers, but the manufacturers abroad, by undercutting it by like the $4 and charging $20 to the distributors, they're making $19 profit on that. So then when you go and pop a 10% matching tariff on it, then it just raised their price to $22. So they just eat it. So it's still $20. It's still cheaper than the American made product. And instead of making $19, they're making $17 now. It does not impact the foreign manufacturers at all. If you want to stop the foreign manufacturers from shipping their stuff in here to drive the American manufacturing, you have to tariff the items to a level that they can no longer compete price-wise. So you take that same item, put a 900% tariff on it, so like 9 times the price. So now it costs them $180, or they have to charge $180 to sell their product here. You know what I mean? They can't reduce their price enough to offset the damage done by the tariffs. So then they'll no longer shipping it here. And then when they're not shipping it here anymore, then local manufacturers will manufacture it. So the reason manufacturing is not popping back as fast as it should is because Trump's too weak on the tariffs. He needs to tariff the items until they can't be sold here anymore, and let the countries be butthurt. Let people complain about the shortage for a while, because guess what? Some entrepreneurial young American is going to figure out how to make that remote control and make it here and employ Americans.
Perfect. How do you feel about current federal interest rates and their impact on Texas home buyers?
Blah. Like, people bought homes all the way up to 10%. People bought homes all the way down, people skipped on buying homes all the way down to 2%. The bigger issue right now is the fact that the market is saturated with buyers and short on supply. And they kind of got trapped in by predatory loans, where they actually gave a loan on a house that, currently the market says it's $400,000, but we know as soon as the market starts going down, it's going to immediately be worth $200,000, and you're not going to be able to sell no matter what you want to do. So I think it's less about the interest rates. I think we'd probably make more of an impact if we just started requiring banks to keep full reserves instead of fractional reserves, and then they're not going to be artificially inflating or artificially creating money in their computer systems, which is going to lead to it'll make a much more realistic level. The reality is the only people that should be in the market are people that are buying new homes for the first time. And instead we have people like switching houses every 5 years so they can upgrade their status. And it's just stupid, and we finance it. So I think it's less about the interest rates and it's more about the work
Supply
around
and
the
demand.
issue. Yeah, exactly. Working around the supply and demand, and creating artificial demand by like propping up this idea of, oh yeah, get a better house. Like, it's dumb.
Or bringing in immigrants.
Well, yeah, there's that too. Like a lot of the cost stuff would just disappear if we got rid of the demand of 20 million people that aren't supposed to be here.
And how do you feel about President Trump keeping corporate entities from purchasing single home properties?
They shouldn't. Like, it's international corporations, big. He's talking about these like BlackRock and Merrill Lynch and all that.
State Street,
yeah. So part of the problem is like he's making it look like, oh, evil corporation, big bad. Like, what freaking Democrat has been in his ear on this issue? So BlackRock does not have any of its own money. The money that they're spending is the money that's in your 401k and your pension and your kids' ESAs, and like that's the money that's being spent on this stuff. So the reality is, like, getting them out of it just means that that's going to take away a revenue stream for people's actual retirements. But it does leave that the corporations are unfairly pushing up the prices because they're bidding against people to buy the houses. So I get that there's two sides of the issue, but I think probably keeping keeping the big financial companies from buying up real estate is probably a really good idea. Especially considering most of it's just sitting there vacant and doesn't actually contribute to the economy. Like, if they were putting it back on the market at a reasonable rate, I'd understand, but that's not what they're doing. So yeah,
because what they're doing is they're buying the properties and then turning them into leering centers
or Airbnbs or whatever.
Yeah.
Like,
right.
Yeah. So yeah, no, they're manipulating the housing prices, but the federal government's engaged in the exact same thing when they're buying up all these houses for the USDA and Housing and Urban Development. I literally like, while I was out campaigning, I talked to a guy who was at his parents' house that he was selling because his parents passed. They had a bunch of debts he needed to take care of, so he was selling the house. And there were a couple competing buyers, and guess who ended up buying it? The federal government bought it for twice what the people were bidding. Yeah, that drives up prices.
Mm-hmm.
So why is the federal government competing against consumers or private homeowners and whatnot? But at the same time, we need to be careful because, like, I mean, that, like, I like to do the camping thing. I got my cabins at my different places. I got a cabin over there by Lake Livingston. We got a cabin up by Lake Palestine. I got a cabin over there in New Mexico for going to the balloon festival. And I got land. I haven't built a cabin on it yet, but I got land over there by Arizona, about 25 miles away from the Grand Canyon. I'm going to build a cabin there, and that's going to be another place that I'm going to go and hang out. So I should have every right to do that as a private citizen. So as long as we make sure that we keep the focus on, like, publicly traded companies, like, artificially, like, wrecking the housing market, we should be able to do that.
All right. Do you support a federal minimum wage, or do you think that should remain a state issue?
Nope. And the Democrats need to just shut the hell up, because every one of the financial model countries that they point to have no federal minimum wage. There is not a Scandinavian country that has a federal minimum wage. So what happens every single time that you do a federal minimum wage is people loses their jobs, more automation comes out, and businesses go out of business. Okay. if you make $15, so you say you've got the small business, okay? Now you've got more overhead. You're not able to make bulk deals because you're not a huge business. Like McDonald's pays half for their hamburger what a regular like mom and pop shop pay for the hamburger. They pay like 3 times as much for their buns at the mom and pop as what McDonald's does. Okay. So what ends up happening is like, and then like labor cost is like in a service industry like that, it can be like 20, 30, 40% of their operating costs. So the small business has less operating margin to be able to absorb an increase in their employees' pay rate. But the big mega corporations that the Democrats all claim are evil can absolutely suck up. Amazon loves it when there's a minimum wage increase. Walmart loves it because a bunch of their competition is going to go out of business because they can suck up the hit.
Well, and let's look at what, let's say, McDonald's and Walmart both have done. You can't go into a Walmart now without having to be your own cashier. I mean, you can, but it's not. It's not as easy as it was when
I'll tell
Walmart
you.
first came out.
Yeah, I came out of the retail industry, so I'll tell you right now, the self-checkout thing is going to take care of itself because, like, they're already starting to pull them out of the Dollar Generals and stuff because they realize that more product walks out than they ever saved in labor. You know what I mean? And the same thing is going to happen eventually at Walmart and all the other retailers because you just can't trust Democrats. I mean, random people checking themselves out.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and I mean,
So,
dude, I get irritated when I walk into a McDonald's and I have to go to a kiosk. I'm like, what's? And then you go to a kiosk, and then if you want to pay cash, you have to go to the counter anyways.
I tell you what, it's so freaking well. Yeah, I never pay cash for anything anymore. But I actually like going in and ordering my food on the kiosk at McDonald's because they always screw it up at the counter anyway. And why do they screw it up at the counter? You got to remember, minimum wage jobs are people that technically have no job skills and they're completely unemployable.
Right.
Like that is a fact. We have a large percentage of our population that if we went back 100 years ago where you had to go out and catch your food or grow your food or whatever, they would die because they're freaking brain dead. Okay. Yeah. Well, guess what? When you have no job skills and no abilities, then you might have to have 5 roommates so you can afford to live. But that's just your life because that's your lot. Get smarter. Stop smoking pot so you're brain dead all the time. Develop some job skills so you can get a higher paid job, but don't complain that you're not making enough money. You are virtually useless and could be replaced by a monkey.
Yeah, right. And I mean, literally, that's the way some jobs are.
Like, and any adult who's making minimum wage, you got bigger problems than the fact that you're making minimum wage.
Right.
Because if you're an adult and you're making minimum wage, yeah, you have less value than most teenagers. Because most teenagers that go and get jobs in high school are not graduating high school making minimum wage.
No. All right, moving on. How will you approach the national debt and the federal deficit without cutting Social Security?
Well, see, that's kind of a catch-22 there, because we do need to cut Social Security, but not the benefits to people that need to get it. We need to cut all the people that shouldn't be getting Social Security on it. Why, when Biden was in between being vice president and being president, was he collecting Social Security? The dude's a multimillionaire. It was stupid. But we need to stop those people from taking Social Security. We need to get all the people that never worked off of Social Security. Sorry, if you didn't work your whole entire adult life, I don't care if you starve. I just don't. Like, especially if you had no Social Security earnings coming to you because you came from another country and you did not live here and you did not contribute to the system. Like, I get that we need to be compassionate, but like, I don't get making 20 million Social Security recipients take less money so we can support 50,000 people that never did a damn thing in their lives to get Social Security. No, I'm done with that. No. Why don't you go try one of those social welfare countries? Maybe they want to feed you when you didn't contribute to their system.
Yeah, right. Okay. What policies will you support
Oh,
to
oh,
address workforce?
hold on. I need to finish that up. As far as cutting the
How
deficit,
dare
we just
you
need to
interrupt
return.
me when I'm asking a question? No, I'm
Because
joking.
I didn't finish. I didn't finish answering the question. So, but no, we just need to return to 2018 spending. We didn't have two wars going on. We don't have two wars going on anymore. There's no pandemic anymore. Get everything set back to those levels, and then cut off all of every single program that does not benefit every single American equally, and we'll have plenty of money that we'll actually be able to start raising. We'll be able to create a sovereign wealth fund for Social Security and start increasing the benefits, not taking them away. The only reason Social Security is struggling is because it was a Ponzi scheme from the day they made it.
Okay. What policies will you support to address workforce shortages in the energy and tech industries?
Nothing. If the companies are having shortages of employees, better start paying to train some employees. Like, again, that's not the federal government's business. It doesn't benefit every single person equally. As a matter of fact, I'm gonna make it a lot harder because I'm gonna make sure we never get another immigrant coming in for one of these tech jobs or specialized jobs again, because we do not. I'm sorry, no vacancy. We're full. No more immigrants. So you're not going to be able to get an H-1B visa either. So you better start developing job programs. Like, like if you need, we'll take like a refinery. Okay. You're going to need oil to refine. You're going to need electricity. You're going to need trucks. You line all of that up. Well, you're going to need the high skilled workers. Why wouldn't you start creating a pipeline of your own to make sure you always have them? They're stupid. No, private sector can handle it if we stop babying them.
Okay. Moving on to the next question. Do you favor the use of tariffs on imports? And if so, for which specific industries?
Yeah, I think I was pretty clear on that. Any place where like they're tariffing any, mine's not about industries. Mine is, if you as a country tariff even one of our items, every single one of your items getting a 9,000% tariff. So you can never sell one of your products in America again. We are the largest consumer market in the world. Not a single country out there can survive us not buying their products. So you make sure that the tariff is high enough that we're not going to buy their products at all anymore. And it's done. Like, they'll stop tariffing us. And like anybody who, now it doesn't have to be directly they're tariffing us. If they're doing anything to make it non-competitive between the countries, nope, cut it off. Done.
Okay. What incentives would you propose for job creation, specifically in the rural areas of the district?
None. Yeah, again, that's local. That's,
yep.
Yeah.
Nope.
The federal government should not be concerned about it. I'll keep the federal government out of it.
What is your stance on the federal regulation of cryptocurrency and financial innovation?
Oh my God, get out of the way. Because as usual, we've got a great burning thing. The blockchain's like phenomenal. The technology's great. The government's butthurt because it's going to be more valuable than money because they don't just artificially create more. So yeah, no, get the government out of the way.
Okay. How would you handle supply chain vulnerabilities that affect Texas-based industries?
I think get the manufacturing back to the United States. Like, I mean, that's it. Like, until we stop depending on other countries, we're always going to have some supply chain vulnerabilities. And I don't think that means federal government. Most of the problem with doing this stuff here in this country has nothing to do with who's going to pay for it. It's about the federal government being in the way. So get the government out of the way, make it easier for people to produce here, open up our minds, open up our resources. I mean, I'll put it simply. If Greenland has all of this rare earth, I guarantee you Alaska has it too.
Mm-hmm.
They're at almost the exact same latitude. They're the exact same volcanic terrain. Like, it's all there. So yeah, I think just we got to keep whittling away at our reliance on other countries for what we need. The more we buy our products from other countries where it's cheaper, the worse it gets here. Like, and why people don't get that and stop buying foreign. I mean, shoot, in my race, I've seen every one of the cars of all my opponents, and they're all driving foreign cars that are brand new, and I'm driving a 20-year-old Dodge truck.
Yep.
So, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So
America
it's
first. And
yeah,
if you tariff those companies that are competing with our with our products, then they're not going to be able to sell their stuff cheaper than what we do.
so like, okay, I'll take Europe. Okay, so Scandinavia, for a Volkswagen, you pay their normal rate. If you get a car from the United States, you're going to pay like 100% tariff, which means the $20,000 car is now worth $40,000. Plus, you're going to pay a 50% VAT tax on it. Now the car is $65,000. So they really keep people from buying cars there. But if they do buy the cars, they're going to go to the one that's made there in their country, and there's none of the other taxes and stuff. So even if it's not directly tariff, they do a lot of stuff to just really rack up the prices. Now on the flip side, their cars go there, and we have like a 10% tariff on them, which makes them $55,000 instead of $50,000. Yeah, it's no. So we just need to tariff them to where we need to keep increasing the tariffs every 30 days until no more items are being imported. So we want to go, if we want to like hit back on Europe's automotive tariffs, then we need to raise our tariffs until no more cars are coming in from Europe. If we want to, and I don't even say that it has to be for the industry. If they tax us on bubble gum, if they give us a tariff or an extra VAT tax on bubble gum, we tariff 900% on every one of their products, and not a single item gets to come in until they get rid of their tariffs. Like that's how you get fair trade. Now, and as far as the third world countries where you can actually live on $50 a month, yeah, no, we're not competing with them at all. They're going to get tariffed until their products are the exact same price as our products, and we can compete head for head. And I know they like to say that, well, the consumer is paying for the tariff. Yes, but they're paying for the tariff on a reduced price. The end result is they're paying the same amount.
Right.
So, but our goal is to get the foreign produced items that are cheap as hell out of the country, because it does not benefit us.
Do you support expanding opportunity zones as an economic development tool for Texas District 10?
So I love what economic opportunity zones are. They're tax cuts for people setting up businesses in certain places, which acknowledges that the federal government's standing in the way of business. I just want the government out of the way of all business. Like, it shouldn't be in any one particular place, because again, you're picking some over others, and that's not what the federal government's supposed to do.
How important is the USMCA to the District 10's economy?
Probably less than people think. Like, we just keep losing jobs to Mexico. HP moved their manufacturing over there, all that. No, get rid of it.
What is your view on entitlement reforms for Medicare to ensure its long-term sustainability?
Medicare or Medicaid?
It says Medicare.
Medicare. Okay, so we need to do the same thing I was talking about doing, about creating a sovereign wealth fund for Medicare, and like getting it funded with not treasury securities, but actual money and assets that can grow in value. And we can cut out, like, until Social Security and Medicare are completely solvent, not another dollar should go to another country. So that's a good place to start, and then I'll look at what else I can do to add value to it until it's solvent long term. How
will you work to reduce the regulatory burden on small business owners in the district?
Burn the regulations. I think it's like the federal code. Yeah, the federal code is like 340,000 pages or something like that. No, burn it. Burn the whole federal code and start over from scratch.
All right. So now that we're done with that, we're going to move on to immigration and border security. We're starting to churn through these. You're giving us nice, good, short answers. So where's your
What number are you at now? I need to take like 2 seconds here. So
uh, give me about 10 more questions. All right.
all right.
All right. So these next 10 questions are going to be on immigration and border security. What is your position on the construction or expansion of a physical wall along the Texas-Mexico border? I think we've addressed this. I think what you're
Yeah,
going to
we
say is
addressed it
do
because
it.
it came up on one of the national levels. Yeah. So I'd actually like to put a wall all the way around Texas so we can keep liberals from getting in. But yeah, anyway.
Yes, but what about the conservatives that want to move from the other states?
Yeah, I don't believe it.
Okay, how should Congress address?
If you were conservative, you wouldn't have let the communists take over anyway.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of conservatives in the huge state of California, but the cities are just more popular.
And then they come here and vote Democrat. No, I don't buy it.
How should Congress address the massive backlog in immigration courts and asylum claims?
Simple. Stop doing hearings for people that cross the border outside of the port of entry. The federal law says that you have to enter the country through a port of entry. If you did not do that, you have no access to other part of the due process because you skipped the first part of the due process. That would be like you get a ticket, right? So you're supposed to go to court and you don't show up. What happens?
You get a warrant.
You're guilty. They arrest you and you have to pay the fine for the ticket.
As well as doing
it's kind of the same thing.
As well as that ends up being a totally separate crime from the crime that you originally committed, because then
yeah, exactly. Which the additional part of that crime is you don't get to come back for 5 years or something like that on the first time, and then you don't get to come back ever if it's the second time or whatever.
And
how
many?
But no, we already have the law for it. This argument about due process is false. If you did not enter through a port of entry, you have no due process because you chose not to participate in the due process.
Right. And as far as asylum claims go, like how many people have like a true reason for asylum? Like if you're like, isn't asylum supposed to be to go to the nearest country?
So well, yeah, we'll knock this all across the board. Asylum is based on international agreements that you can claim, you can file for, not you can file for asylum in the next safe country that you come to. Considering people only come to this country from Mexico and Canada, and nobody is granted asylum from Mexico or Canada, then nobody from any nation in the world is able to claim asylum in the United States of America. The end.
All right.
And you know what? I just don't care. Like, I just don't care. I don't care about asylum seekers. You helped create the problems in your country. Stay there and fix them.
Absolutely.
Like, too bad, so sad. Guess what? We got our country because we fought for it. Go back to your country and fight for it. Like, it's not America's problem. And it does not benefit all Americans equally. So, no, the federal government shouldn't be involved in taking in foreigners. So I think the Immigration Act can be repealed entirely and just replaced with no vacancy.
Okay, so this next question I think is going to be simple. I think I already know the answer. I think you're going to say yes, and I think we can move on from there. But just to go over the question, do you support ending catch and release and returning to a remain in Mexico style policy?
I think they should stop trying to catch them and just start shooting them. They're invading the country.
Okay, well, I think you could have been a little more respectful than just shooting them. You are trying to become a Congress member.
Why is our international border the only one that you can run across and not get shot?
That's a valid question, and I'm not saying that I disagree with you.
Yeah. So I mean, I was being a little facetious, but yeah, I want automated turrets on the border because you don't get across it for any reason. Like, I don't get it. Like, somebody breaks into your house, you shoot them.
Yep.
Somebody breaks into your country, you shoot them.
Right.
Same problem, same solution. But But like, yeah, the idea of catch and release, no, catch and throw them back across. But if you do that, they're just going to come right back across, and they're going to keep doing it until they get across and you don't catch them.
And that's
So
just
no,
more of a
just shoot 'em.
burden on the taxpayers.
Yeah, shoot them.
Okay.
They don't belong here. You know what? So here's my thing. It sounds horrible, but about the 5th time you shoot somebody for running across the border, they stop running across the border.
Well, that's like, you remember that song that Neil Young did about Ohio and the students and stuff, you know, that stopped a lot of protests. The National Guard coming
Do I
in.
look like somebody that's ever listened to Neil Young?
Well, I'm sure you've heard the song "4 Dead in Ohio." He was talking about the campus shootings back in whatever it was. I don't remember. But anyways, it stopped the protesting. Enough people died, and they stopped protesting. I mean, on campus.
I know it sounds ridiculously harsh, but these people are coming across here and murdering people that should be safe in their own city. So yeah, no,
yeah,
shoot
no, I agree.
If they want to be safe in the country, they can go to the port of entry.
Okay. So,
all right, next question.
What is your stance on a nationwide mandate for E-Verify for all employers? I personally think that that's a great idea. E-Verify. I think nobody should be working here that didn't come here legally.
Only if it's biometric, because otherwise it doesn't matter. They'll just keep stealing people's identities like they have for the last 100 years.
Okay. What is your long-term plan for DACA recipients and dreamers living in Texas?
Bye.
I don't think it was ever about the dreamers.
Yeah, I still don't care. Bye.
Yeah. And it
like
never was about
you don't want to go to a country that you didn't grow up in because your parents brought you here. Okay, well, hate your parents. Bye. Like if your parents move you into my house, you're not entitled to live there because your parents did it.
Yeah.
You can still go back to your house. Bye.
Okay, well, this question, I think you're going to agree with me on it. I say I don't support it, but I don't know, maybe you'll have a different take. I don't think you will. From our conversation and our previous conversations, would you support a pathway to legal status for undocumented immigrants with no criminal record?
No. No, I'm done. No vacancy. Everybody goes. Bye.
Yep. If you wanted to be here, you would have done it legally.
If you are existing on the soil in this country, you have a criminal record because you violated our immigration law. And you are minimum guilty of a misdemeanor and potentially guilty of a felony if it's not your first time.
And I like how people are like, well, it's a misdemeanor. Well, isn't a misdemeanor a crime?
It's just a different level of crime.
Okay,
yeah, but it's only, hold on. It's only a misdemeanor if it's the first time they've done it, and over half of them have done it more than once.
Right. So moving on, how should the federal government handle the influx of fentanyl through legal ports of entry? I can't wait to hear your answer on this one.
Well, they're talking about the legal ports of entry, so we just need better examinations of stuff that's coming through our ports of entry. That's all.
Okay,
better scrutiny, and when we catch people that are letting it through on purpose, they don't ever get out of prison again. They get tried for the deaths of every single person that's being killed by the drugs that they allow into the country.
This ought to be a good one.
All right.
What role should the state of Texas play in federal immigration enforcement?
Shoot them at the border.
All right.
I mean, it's a federal job, but the state has every the Supreme Court agreed on the issue too, that they have every right to
protect their borders.
To protect their borders, but they have every right to enforce federal law in the event that the federal government is not doing it. Contrary to what a lot of the people think, there's no opt-out on it either. You are actually obligated to enforce federal law. Like if you catch somebody committing even an international crime, you're obligated to arrest them at the local level and hold them for the federal authority. So yeah, no, I mean, we already got the laws for all this stuff. We just need to start ratcheting up the penalties on the people that don't follow the law until they stop breaking the law.
Okay, moving on. Do you support ending or reforming chain migration? I support ending it.
Yeah, there's
What,
there is no reason. Okay, so if and the way they do this is, okay, I marry somebody from another country and they come here. Okay, let her bring her kids. I'm okay if it's like, you know what I mean, or let him bring his kids, something like that. Okay, but that does not mean that now her dad, father, or her dad, mom, uncle, aunt, cousins, all should be able to migrate here. No, absolutely, family. When you came here, there's no more chain migration. Done. Over.
all right. This is question 50, and then we can take a short break. How can legal immigration be streamlined for skilled workers needed in the Texas tech and medical sectors? Now, I kind of have strong feelings on
Okay.
this because
I don't buy the Texas tech sectors. Okay. Now, medical, we need nurses. I'll say that. We need nurses. Okay. We have a chronic shortage of nurses because we're chronically fat and unhealthy in this country. Okay. But so here's my with this solving the problem by going to other countries. Like in the medical field, you understand doctors are trained for the diseases that they're going to experience in their part of the world. So we should not be bringing doctors from other parts of the world. Now, what we should do is look at streamlining the process for people becoming doctors and making it less expensive so we can get more doctors. Does that make sense?
so incentivize Americans to become doctors.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and then like, I don't know, go raid the $20 billion endowment of Harvard University and use it to pay for a bunch of people to go to med school. I'm okay with that.
Right. All right.
So yeah, there needs to be in-depth looks at what they're charging to get people out of these fields, and then stop wasting teachers on teaching stuff like, you know, lesbian dance theory.
Right. Yeah. That's garbage.
Let's get the educational resources on the technical spheres that we actually need. All right, guys. So we're gonna do a quick 5-minute break again. Like we're doing a lot of questions here today, so we get the biggest one. But at the same time, I do still have a campaign going, so I'm having to respond to messages here and there, and I can't do that and focus on this. So give us another like little 5 minutes, and we'll be back and continue with the questions. What question are we on now, Brad?
We're on question 51. We've got about 2 more pages worth of questions to go
Okay.
through. Three
So
more.
actually, it wasn't 100
2.5.
question. It was like actually like 110 because of the 10 impact questions at the beginning. So it's actually 110 questions. But yeah, so we're over halfway. I didn't know it was going to take this long, but it's cool. I'll try and talk faster and get to the point quicker.
Well, a lot of these questions, as we've noticed, we have already addressed in the first 10 questions, but we're getting more in depth. This is the most in-depth conversation with a congressional candidate during this election cycle that any of you are going to see. And I hope you guys continue to watch and stay with us. Like, subscribe, share this interview so that we can get Rob Brown into the 10th congressional district and get the government out of your life, your business, and your wallet. Thank you very much, and stay tuned. All right, ladies and I still got music playing in the background. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. I'm Brad Lee. You're watching OTR, Off the Rails, Right versus Left. I'm interviewing today in the most in-depth interview of a congressional candidate that you will ever see. Speaking with Rob Brown for Texas District 10, getting the government out of your life, your business, and your wallet. Rob, welcome back.
Good to be back. It's a long one, but I think, wouldn't it be nice if every person that you vote for, you could get this much information from? That's the whole purpose of doing this interview, is to make sure that everybody knows exactly where I stand on as much stuff as possible.
Hopefully it's not too boring for you. Hopefully you're getting to know Rob as a candidate and what he believes in. Next, we're going to go into energy, environment, and the grid. So the first question I will ask, how will you balance Texas's oil and gas legacy with the growing renewable energy sector?
Oh, the renewable energy is a scam. I mean, like, completely. It's 100% a scam. And it's based on a false predicate that carbon dioxide is somehow bad. But I mean, back in the Cambrian explosion, we had 5,000 parts per million of CO2. We now have less than 500 parts per million. If anything, I think that we need more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere to expand the greening in some of the Arctic and Antarctic regions. But if they really thought that carbon dioxide was a problem, we have a great natural, like, carbon capture system called plants and trees, and we would just be focused on planting more of those. We don't need technology. We're never going to approach the efficacy of trees in anything we do. So it's all fake. The supposed green energies do way more damage. They spend so much fossil fuels creating and manufacturing and mining the materials to make the green new energy that it will never, ever in its lifetime offset the amount of damage that was done while creating the windmill or the solar panel. So yeah, the whole thing's a scam. I think Texas's direction needs to be on like clean oil generation, clean coal generation, natural gas generation, but most importantly, nuclear energy. There are literally thousands of nuclear power plants around the world, and everybody freaks out over like one or two accidents that have happened. And like the two biggest ones, Chernobyl and Fukushima, those were caused by earthquakes. Like, nobody talks about the fact that there was an earthquake at the exact time that Chernobyl happened, and they said that, oh no, it was because of their testing. No, they were doing their testing and an earthquake happened. So you know, so it was like very extraordinary events that caused those two problems. Obviously, it's not as deadly and doomful as it's said to be, because the Chernobyl area has live people there. We need to remember that. Go ahead.
I live less than 20 miles from a nuclear power plant. There is
Everybody
actually a nuclear power plant in just outside of Granbury.
Yeah. Well, and everybody that lives in Brazos County lives near two nuclear power plants that they have over at the university there. So,
and they've probably been there for decades.
Well, they're small modular reactors, so they're fairly new, but no, I mean, the reality is it's safe. It's the only net zero carbon production or energy production other than hydroelectric and geothermal. Those are both net zero also, but not as expandable, because you have to have the river there and you have to have the geothermal vent there in order to run those two. So yeah, you can put nuclear power anywhere. You can scale them up or down based on the needs. I would actually like to see all these data centers and stuff using the small modular reactors so they don't impact the grid and they can sell their extra power back. So yeah, that's the biggest thing. Like, and we need more refineries also as well in Texas, so we can refine more of our oil here. as our production goes up, because the more refineries we have, the cheaper the end products that we use, the diesel and the gasoline, get.
Could we have our editor go ahead and change the ticker back to Vote Brown for Texas?
Yeah.
What federal resources will you fight for to harden the Texas power grid against extreme weather?
Well, I mean, so far it's looking like they've done a pretty good job so far, but they just we need to stop relying on the
Renewable energies.
Yeah, exactly. The renewable energies are not, they're not really good. Like they're not effective. They don't work when the sun's not shining. And guess what? When it's cold and cloudy, the sun's not really shining. The windmills freeze up because the lubricants freeze. Or even if they don't entirely freeze, they get thicker and make them harder to turn. And I don't know if you know, but like the wind has to be like just straight out cussing in order for those things to even move. So like, yeah, it's none of that's all a burden to the system. The battery banks that would be storing the backup power that comes off of those for demand situations, like those are less effective when they're cold. So yeah, I mean, all the way around, like just focus on nuclear and fossil fuel production, because if you don't remember, they don't have any idea how much fossil fuels there are, because they said we were going to be out by now, and clearly we're not. So
right.
And well, then they're
in fact,
actually
some of the wells are actually filling back up again.
Yeah, well, and like part of that's from like the whole fracking process is causing wells that were out of oil to refill, because the pressure shooting the oil through the cracks over back to the original deposits. So yeah, I think there's a lot that people just don't understand about how oil works, because they lied to us the whole time and said that it was dinosaurs, and it's not.
Right. Do you support the expansion of nuclear energy as a primary power source for Texas?
Yeah, absolutely. Can you still hear me?
I can hear you. I just can't see you.
Yeah, I don't know what happened to the picture of me, but I'll figure it out. Anyway, but yeah, so the source of the nuclear is a source of energy. It's our most productive source. It has the least transfer. We got to make sure that we have, again, this is where the desalinization, so we have extra water for cooling nuclear reactors. That becomes important as well. But again, we can up the it actually kind of feeds back into itself. So we can create more water for cooling the nuclear reactors, so we can make more power cheaper for bringing down the cost of the desalinization, to make more water so we can make more reactors. Yeah, it's a self-feeding cycle.
Circular reasoning. All right.
Mm-hmm.
What is your view on large-scale climate proposals like the Green New Deal? I already know. Get rid of it.
It's a scam. Like, it is a scam. Like, they've made no change whatsoever in the CO2 levels at all, and yet a whole bunch of people got rich off of it. Like Solyndra, all those people got rich, and then the money was gone, and they never produced anything. So,
all right, moving on.
Free market. Let the free market determine if it's going to go forward. But no government.
That's going to be close to the same answer for this next question. Should the federal government provide more incentives for electric vehicle charging in rural areas?
No, because nobody in rural areas wants an electric vehicle.
Exactly. What is your stance on federal regulations for forever chemicals, PFAS, in local water supplies?
So we just said local, so I think the local government should be keeping an eye on it. It's one of those things, like every single state has their own environmental protection agency. So why do we need a federal one?
Right. So should the EPA's, the Environmental Protection Agency's regulatory authority be limited within the state of Texas?
Yeah, they shouldn't exist at all.
Exactly.
So even the stuff that they do get involved in with like the Superfund sites, they've never cleaned one up. Like, they're all still toxic. So like, there's no point of federal EPA.
What policies would you pursue regarding carbon capture and storage technologies?
So again, plant trees. I don't believe in carbon capture technology. If it ends up being a viable technology and they have some use for it, then it'll go for itself. But it's one of those things where it was specifically created to be something the government will always pay for. And yeah, I'm not okay with that.
How will you address environmental and land rights concerns related to fracking in the region?
Well, so that's interesting. I do think that they need to look at maybe some other options for the chemicals that they use in the fracking process, because there is some degree of bleed through to the water table and whatnot, and the detergents as well. But again, like it's happening in the state, it should be up to the state, and the federal government should keep their nose out of it.
Oh boy. I think I know the answer to this one too, and I think our viewers should as well after this in-depth conversation that we had. Do you support the U.S. remaining in international climate agreements like the Paris Accord?
No.
Okay.
I'm kind of pro getting out of every international agreement, not just the climate.
Right. Why should we be involved in policing the world?
Exactly.
All right. So now we're going to move on to education and family issues. I know you're a family man. I'm a family man. And those are pretty important.
Mine might all be adults now, and you got to deal with teenagers.
Yeah. Yes. But you are helping your wife with your special needs son. So, that could all be. Do you support federal school choice programs, including vouchers or education savings accounts?
Again, I don't support the federal government paying for education at all, because that was always that's one of the programs that was always local, and the federal government got involved and it got worse. So I want the federal government out of it. I don't want them doing voucher programs. I don't want the federal government doing student loans. I don't want the federal government involved in education, because they've proven they can't do anything right.
Right. I mean, look, back in the 50s, back when, there was segregation, the black kids were getting smarter, and now it's not working the same way. I wonder why that is. How do you plan to address the teacher shortage and improve school safety in the district?
Well, improve school safety is pretty easy. Arm all the teachers. But as far as improving or recruiting teachers, again, free market. I don't think there should be public schools. I think it should be all private. The biggest issues that schools have is the parents don't whoop that ass on school. Send them back into the classrooms, because like most school districts are 40% of their staff is administrators. No, it's a joke. It's ridiculous. Get past it. Right. I think if people were smart, they'd just homeschool.
Right. And here's another thing. It's keeping parents from being parents is Child Protective Services. Whatever happened to good old fashioned passionate ass whooping? You can't do that now, because that's child abuse. Yeah, I'll tell you what child abuse is. The CSAM, that's child abuse. So, moving on. I know the answer to this. It's going to be no, but it's on my sheet of questions to ask you. Should the federal government have a role in K-12 education standards, or should it be left to local boards?
Local, 100%. That's an easy one.
What is your stance on parental rights legislation in the public education system?
I want to pass a nationwide Parents' Bill of Rights.
How will you help Texas graduates manage or forgive student loan debt?
Nope.
Won't do it.
Chances are, if you made a bad decision about the debt, you probably shouldn't have been going to college, because you weren't smart enough anyway.
Right. Do you support federal funding for universal pre-K or early childhood education?
No.
What is your position?
I think we'll be better off repairing the economy, so we can go back to having moms in the houses instead of like rushing off to work.
What is your position on Title IX changes regarding gender identity in school athletics?
Yeah, I would like a constitutional amendment that says there's only men and women, and the third option is gender dysphoria, which is a mental illness.
How will you promote vocational and technical training as an alternative to four-year degrees?
Well, again, that comes back down to the state level. I think the federal government should be completely out of it because we've proven that we're inept at the federal level.
How should campus free speech and viewpoint diversity be protected at Texas universities?
So, campuses can have any control over speech on their campus that they want if it's private property. If you take a penny of federal aid, free speech is 100%. And if it's violated, the dean will go to prison for 20 years for violating constitutional rights.
What level of federal funding do you support for Pell Grants?
None. I don't support grants. We've been given Pell Grants for people to get their African bee studies degrees that don't pay anything. So the reality is people can get their education funded 100% by private student loans if they actually need it. I also think that the parents should be more active in like creating ESAs and stuff like that to fund their kids' education. But we also have this like over pushing of people into careers where the degrees are going to be completely useless anyways. And Pell Grants don't discriminate between what people are studying, so they're just a bad idea. And then again, federal government's supposed to help everybody equally, and Pell Grants are picking some and making others pay for it. So it's still not okay.
All right, so moving on. That's it for education and family issues. Moving on to healthcare. Should the Affordable Care Act be repealed, replaced, or reformed?
It needs to be repealed, but we can use that website to make a nationwide directory so people can competitively shop. We need to open up so the insurance companies can provide insurance across the country so there's real competition. And then like beyond that, like the government should be out of it, but we need to look into the illegal activities that pharmaceutical companies are doing and get rid of we talked a little bit about the increasing administrative costs because of the regulatory burden. So we need to look at getting out of that, and that'll actually drive the prices down. But the Affordable Care Act was designed to destroy our healthcare system.
Do you support allowing Medicare to negotiate drug prices more broadly to lower costs?
I don't think they should have to, but I like the most favored nations policy being codified to make sure they can't charge us more than they're charging any other industrialized nation. We need to get rid of pharmacy benefit managers, and we need to make sure that if these pharmaceutical companies are being predatory in their pricing, then we just pull their patents and let somebody else make the drug.
How will you protect coverage for people with pre-existing conditions if health laws change?
So I have kind of a split feeling on pre-existing conditions. Okay. If you have a pre-existing condition that is not caused by your own choices and behavior, okay, you should be covered. If you have a pre-existing condition because you have a drug addiction or a cheeseburger addiction or something like that, you're on your own. You made those choices and you knew the health consequences. Like as a smoker for years and years and years and years and years and years, if I end up with lung cancer, I don't think other people should have to pay for my treatment. So, like, I mean, it's stupid that you have the autonomy to make your own decisions, but you have the responsibility, if you make those decisions, to pay your own way and stop expecting other people to pay for you.
Right. So, like, okay, let's say, for example, I lived in Washington State, and I didn't have to pay extra insurance for, say, the chance of a tornado coming through. And then I moved to Oklahoma. I should expect to have to pay more for insurance because I moved to a place that's more high risk.
Yeah, but more I'm talking about people that are 400 pounds and calling their their
their
diabetes a
obesity and
pre-existing condition, and no, that's not. Their heart disease is by choice. Their diabetes is by
yeah,
choice.
you could
You know
change
what I
that by
mean?
changing your habits.
Yeah, your lung cancer is by choice.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I'm not for covering for forcing insurance providers to cover pre-existing conditions that are a result of the people's own decisions.
Well, I think they should have to pay for it, not the insurance companies, but the people
Yeah, the
with the
people. Yeah,
pre-existing conditions.
yeah,
So
and that's what I'm
if you
saying.
go and you get an insurance company and they say, well, you have this pre-existing condition, so your coverage is going to cost more. I don't have a problem with that. Or it's not covering you. I mean,
Yeah, exactly. So and that's the big thing. We act like that if the people have pre-existing conditions that they can't get insurance, they can. They just have to pay more for it. And if you made the choice to smoke for 20 years, you knew you were going to end up with cardiovascular problems later. So you made that decision. Maybe you made a bad
right.
decision, but it was still your decision.
Or if you decided to drive drunk and now you're a paraplegic, well, I mean,
Exactly. It's the same kind of thing. Like
right,
we always talk about people's rights to make their decisions, but yeah, then they have the obligations to pay for the repercussions.
right. Okay, moving on to the next question. What is your plan to address the mental health crisis in Central Texas schools and workplaces?
The mental health crisis?
Yeah, what is your plan to address the mental health crisis in Central Texas schools and workplaces?
Well, I don't know about schools and workplaces, but just start locking the crazy people up. Now I know
Right.
Democrats won't like that plan because they're all crazy, but I mean, lock them up.
Yep.
like
I'm with
like
you.
I so it's so everybody, I think everybody that's ever heard me talk knows that I'm a fan of Ronald Reagan. I named my daughter Reagan after him. But the bottom line is that's one of the biggest mistakes he made, other than the amnesty, was closing down the asylums, because we do need places to keep our crazy people. I would also like to do some investigative research into psychiatry and psychological practices, because it seems kind of weird to me that we've had psychiatry for 150 years and yet we've yet to cure a single mental illness. That's of interest to me. But no, absolutely, we have to have asylums. People that are dangerous need to be kept off the streets, whether they're criminals or insane or drug addicts. They should not be on the streets interfering with other people.
Do you
And guess
favor
what?
permanent?
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I was going to move on to the next question. Finish
No,
your
I was just
point.
going to say, I wonder how many people would actually try drugs if they knew that people that end up junkies end up locked up with the nuts at the nut house.
Right. Okay. Do you favor permanent expansion of telehealth access for rural residents?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I think telehealth gets a knock, but there's like plenty of things that you can like start the initial levels much cheaper if you start with telehealth. But again, like removing the administrative burdens, so it's easier for doctors who come out of medical school that want to start their own private practice can do that, will actually be more impactful for the rural areas. But we got to get the government out of the way.
Right. And then, you can visit your doctor over the phone or whatever, the
Yeah,
laptop,
exactly.
and get your initial information to the doctor before you have to go and, make an appointment. And I think that would bring down costs.
Yeah. Well, and then like just the idea, like if you get a UTI, for example, and you've had a UTI before, you know exactly what the UTI is. A telehealth doctor can prescribe you the antibiotics to fix your UTI, and you didn't have to waste time or energy or all of that. So yeah, telehealth definitely, and especially if you do telehealth appointments with doctors when there aren't local providers for you, you should be able to do follow-ups by telehealth as well.
Okay, moving on. How will you lower prescription drug costs for the seniors in the district?
So I think I was pretty clear about that. We have to attack the patent thicketing, the way they add a molecule to the drugs, and then they call it a new drug, get a new patent, then start pushing that product. Well, they simultaneously stop producing the other one that's under patent for like another 10 years. So by the time their patent expires, there's no demand for the old drug and nobody ends up picking it up as a generic. if that makes sense. So the patent thickening needs to be ended. I think we'll have a lot more drugs available on the market for cheaper prices if we stop our bureaucrats from getting put on the patent so they get kickbacks for approving the drugs that don't actually change anything. And we all know that the mess that was caused with the patents on oxycodone and hydrocodone and Oxycontin. They combined the two drugs together and made oxycodone and created the opioid epidemic. And the whole reason it happened is because they were about to lose their patents. And so they needed a new drug that they could patent. And then they went and pushed that as a safe alternative to hydrocodone and Oxycontin and stopped producing the separates. So people would be forced into the new drug. So yeah, like it just, the pharmaceutical companies, I generally think that like most companies are not really like benevolent or malevolent. They're more like down the middle, just trying to make money for their shareholders. But I think pharmaceutical companies, literally, I would not be shocked to find out that some pharmaceutical company has had the cure for cancer for 100 years or been able to fix the Teleride that makes us age and die. And they just kept it silent because they make more money treating the diseases and treating old age than they do off of providing a cure.
All right, moving on. Should surprise medical billing protections be strengthened further?
Yeah, it shouldn't be possible. I think it's ridiculous that you have to know everything about including the price about a car when you go to buy it at a dealership, and you have to know everything about the ingredients of a hot dog and the price of it when you go to a grocery store. But the most important thing, our healthcare, it's completely obtuse. So yeah, there needs to be clarity, not just in pricing, but in alternatives as well. If Plan B is 59% effective and Plan A is 60% effective, you still need to tell them about Plan B that costs $1,000 and not just Plan A that costs $100,000.
Well,
so I think there's a lot of that going on.
I don't think we should be supporting the Plan B. I mean, we need babies.
I'm not that Plan B ass. Anyway, but no, but you get what I'm saying.
Yes.
Like, they're giving them the most expensive option and not telling them, oh yeah, for $99,000 less, we can do this, and it's probably going to get about the same results.
Right.
So they need to be given all their options so they can make smart decisions, because not only is their health a consideration, their finances are a consideration as well.
All right, moving on. What role should the federal government play in solving healthcare workforce shortages?
Again, I think probably there's a lot of overregulation that goes into the people becoming healthcare professionals to begin with. And I think probably letting private companies pay for training programs to turn their nurse assistants and their CNAs and all that into nurses, and their nurses into doctors, by allowing them to write that off on their taxes. And like, but then you'd have to like get tougher on if somebody like has somebody pay them to be a doctor and they need to be a doctor there for 10 years and then they can't get out of their contract. So that's another thing, like making people stick to their obligations.
How will you rein in private equity's influence in the healthcare industry to lower costs?
Private equity's influence? Like again, it comes down to just like pricing and transparency. Like private equity is just investors trying to get a return on their investment. They're going to do that. But if you have transparency, they can't do anything to stop more affordable prices from more affordable products from coming onto the market. So I think if we open it up and make it easier for affordable options to come to market, then we'll take care of the interference of the private equity that's trying to keep the more expensive options there because they make better money off of it.
Do you support the federal legalization of medical or recreational marijuana?
So, if you had caught me 20 years ago, I would have probably said that I was okay with the all-out legalization of marijuana. But then I was relocated to Colorado for a year while they were doing the legalization of marijuana there, which was regulated. Everybody could use marijuana in their own home, blah, blah, blah. They set up for the dispensaries. And what happened? The entire city smells like marijuana every day, 24 hours a day, everywhere you go.
And they've got billboards saying "wake and bake," and yeah,
yeah,
I used to be a big pothead, as you know. No longer am I using it, and I don't. They say that it's going to provide more tax revenue, but that
yeah,
what are
but
they
the
going?
governments don't need more money. We already know that.
Yeah.
So, oh, I see a button in the chat. Did somebody chat in? What do we got?
This guy is a joke. Ashley Bannon 1253.
Yeah.
Here's the joke. This guy's is a joke. Get your grammar right, Ashley Bannon.
Yeah. So, yeah, bad
Who is
grammar. And
that?
how would you know that I'm a joke if you have no actual constructive criticism or any actual questions? Like, way to go. Okay. Anyways, just a moron.
All right.
So anyway, so as I was saying though, but medical marijuana, there are some actual applications for it. I don't know about, like, it seems like they said everybody in California had glaucoma when they made medical marijuana. But at the same time, I also saw, while my dad was dying, his medical marijuana made it so he could actually eat food after chemo. So, you know, I think there is an application for medical marijuana, recreational marijuana. Americans just aren't responsible enough for it.
And I've seen some things where it could help with Parkinson's.
Yeah. I mean, like, again, it should be studied.
Are some benefits,
it should be, yeah, it should be studied like any other drug. But as far as recreational, no, the marijuana that they have now, the THC products, they're not marijuana anymore. They are a hard drug, and they are having long-term impacts on people. They're causing people to be like a menace to society, if you will. And the benefit of a little bit of tax revenue does not overwhelm the cost if one kid gets hit by somebody who's stoned and not paying attention.
Right.
So,
all right. So now we're moving on to, we've got national security and foreign policy questions, social and governance issues, and those are the last two topics that we will be going over. So we have about 20 or so more questions, and then we'll be done. And then
awesome.
Ashley Bannon can go joke with her friends. So I don't know why she even commented, but anyways.
Yeah.
So regarding the national security and foreign policy, what level of military and financial support should the U.S. provide to Ukraine?
0. They are not a treaty ally. We are not obligated to do anything for them. They should have kept their nukes. We shouldn't have helped overthrow their government. Biden shouldn't have kept pushing. We shouldn't have been pushing NATO closer to Russia, just like we wouldn't be okay with them moving into Mexico. So, no, I mean, it's not our obligation. If they want to buy our weapons, I'm okay with them buying their weapons. We'll sell our weapons anywhere in the world, just not our top tier, because we're not going to create people that are going to be actually a threat to us.
I think the people around Ukraine should be supporting it more than we are, but that's just me.
Yeah, they're not a NATO ally. They're not a NATO ally. They're not a member of the European Union. I don't know why they're anybody else's concern. And the bottom line is the Ukrainian people are tied to the Russian people, because the Russian people are the people that fled from Kiev when the Mongols came and conquered it and went and settled along the, I forget, is it the Neva? I think it's the Neva River in Moscow. Anyways, they settled along the river over there, and those were the Rus people. That's where the name Russian came from, was from the people that were from the Kievan Rus. So, it's just not our business. Like, it's a territorial dispute between two countries halfway around the world. I don't care.
Okay, how should the U.S. respond to the growing economic and military threats from China?
Block all trade with them. They'll collapse in a year.
Do you support increasing federal
not just them,
spending?
but anybody who does business with them no longer does business with the U.S. China will disappear real quick, and they won't be a threat.
That would cause a problem with Canada too.
Good.
Okay. Do you support increasing federal defense spending in the current global climate? I agree with you. Good on Canada.
Yeah, no. So actually, we kept increasing the defense spending despite ending 2 wars. No, we need to look at it. We're spending way too much money on the military, and that's not to say that our soldiers aren't good and we don't need our soldiers, because we do, and we need our military equipment. But like our appropriations and procurement is completely broken, and it all needs to be redone. And I don't want to give a single dollar. I would say, guess what, military, you get no money next year if you can't pass your audit this year. Maybe they'll figure out where all the money's going. But I mean, obviously, I'm not actually that extreme. But yeah, definitely until they can figure out where their money's going, they shouldn't get any more money. And they should be cut back to 2018 spending levels, because we have 2 wars that are no longer gone. So you can at least get down to there, which is like $600 billion. So. And that was while we were fighting 2 wars. So, like, I don't want it to sound like I just like want to gut the military, but there's no reason we should be spending $1 trillion a year on our military.
Yeah, no, we should know where the spending is going. Like, we shouldn't be spending $90,000 on a bag of washers. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, we don't need to spend more in our military than the next 20 countries combined. Like, it's stupid.
Exactly. All right. What is your position on U.S. aid to Israel?
Nope. They can buy whatever they want.
Should there be specific condition placed on all foreign aid packages?
Yeah, no more foreign aid. I'm done.
How would you approach diplomatic and trade relations with Mexico?
Well, after we bomb out the Sinaloa cartels and the New Generation cartel and all those other cartels, then we say, okay, so get it together or we're done. Like, I don't know. Mexico's not an ally. They've never done anything for us. Like,
the only reason Mexico is allowed to be a country is because we allowed them to be a country.
Yeah, we didn't want it. We just wanted straight out to California. So, like, I just don't care about Mexico because the people are so corrupt that they're okay with their country. They elected a woman who had 37 of her opponents murdered. I mean,
okay,
we need to stop pretending values that we have.
Right. What policies will you support to protect U.S. infrastructure from foreign cyber attacks? What policies?
Okay. Hold on. So I'm hiding the camera and doing the audio again because you completely cut out. I keep doing that when the bandwidth is dropping to make sure that we have like it continues. So ask the question again.
What policies will you support to protect U.S. infrastructure from foreign cyber attacks? What policies?
I don't know. Stop putting everything online would be a good start.
Any other policies?
Like, I think
specific?
No, that's. Let's see. I'm trying to see that you still cut out again, so I want to like go and look. Yeah, so we just need to get it offline. Our infrastructure for people to access. Like, it should, like, if you want to have a closed circuit, like in a city or whatever, but we should not have accessible infrastructure in the world. We should also make sure that we have, you know, the grids have repeating breaks where you can reroute stuff. But no, the idea that we thing that can no longer be hacked if we just unplug it from the internet, like unplug it from the internet. I think it's a pretty easy solution.
Do you favor a continued strong U.S. military presence in the Indo-Pacific?
So I'm okay with having a strong military presence anywhere in the world where the country that we're partnering with is actually contributing to us being there, because they benefit way more than we do from us being there. Like, I'm sorry, we've got a huge mountain range in the West, a huge mountain range in the East, big old oceans. Nobody can invade us. None of this really matters to us. So yeah, if you want us there to help secure the region for you in the Indo-Pacific, then the countries there can pay for our expenses of being there. Minimum half, preferably more.
All right.
But I'm kind of tired of pretending that if we're not everywhere in the world, we're under threat. No, we're not. Like, nobody can really attack us. Nobody, the ability to land mass amounts of troops in the United States, and if they did, whew, we got like 3 million guns in this country. Bring it.
Should the U.S. withdraw from or reform its participation in certain international organizations?
It bammed out again.
Okay, how's it going?
Okay, I can hear you now. Do it again.
Can you hear me? Okay, should the U.S. withdraw from or reform its participation in certain international organizations?
Yeah, we need to get out of NATO. Done. Because they use NATO as a bludgeon against us constantly. We need to get out of the United Nations.
Well, if we weren't in NATO, NATO would cease to exist.
Yeah, because we're paying for it.
Exactly.
The United Nations is just as non-influential as it ever was. It has never prevented a war. It does nothing anymore except for we're paying for a bunch of people from other countries that can barely afford to ride around on horseback to try and criticize us for stuff that they do way worse on. So, yeah, no, we need to get out of NATO, World Health Organization, UN. I don't think we should be part of any international organizations anymore. There's no benefit for us.
Okay. How can federal services for veterans be modernized to reduce wait times and improve care?
Well, first of all, cut all the administrators and put providers in there. So I actually have kind of an interesting story on this one. I'll try and keep it as quick as I can, and it's not an individual story. It's like actually repeated over and over. They continue to add administrators, but the administrators continue to fire the nurses and the doctors right before they finish their 2-year probationary period. And by right before, I mean like the day before. And it's happened a bunch of times that I know of here locally. So yeah, if we need to take care of people, maybe stop firing the providers that are taking care of the people. Yeah, just tearing it. The bureaucracy was built by bureaucrats that don't know how anything works. So we need to send some people in that actually know how to run organizations and just revamp the entire veteran care. And then, like I said, make it so they can actually get their health care where they're at, because most of the issues that they're having are not veteran specific, and they can be provided by public services, and the military can just pay for it. And it should come completely out of the military budget, because they're the ones that created the veterans, so they're the ones that need to support them.
Roger that. All right, Rob, I want to thank you for doing this. We're going on 3.5 hours. We have about 10 questions left regarding social and governance issues. What is your stance on abortion rights following the Dobbs decision?
So I get the argument that it's a state's right because it wasn't specifically legislated in the Constitution. At the same time, healthcare is legislated all the time at the federal government. So I guess we need to get rid of all legislation pertaining to healthcare if the Dobbs decision's right. Otherwise, we do need to pass, I'd like a heartbeat law, exactly like Texas has. And the reason I want it is because in Texas, we went from 50,000 abortions a year to 100. So yeah, extrapolate that across the country and imagine how amazing that would be. And before anybody on the left go, right to choose, my body, my rights. Well, that's a separate human being. It's not your body. It just happens to be residing inside your body at this time. But I look at the reason why things were invented, and I've built black and brown babies, and it's been killing 1 million for 20 years. I think for evil, you don't pretend that it's good. So that kind of answered the next question too, didn't it?
Well, do you support a federal ban on abortion after a certain point, or should it remain a state issue?
Again, I like whether you call it first term or you call it heartbeat. I'm okay with that. Like, we can get to that because I mean the reality is like such a huge percentage of pregnancies end in miscarriage before the women ever find out they're pregnant, anyways. But beyond that, it's kind of a compromise for me. I'd like to just say ban abortion entirely, but that's never going to happen. But if we do like a heartbeat law, I think that that'll at least like curtail a lot of the abortions until we can retrain the society that murdering babies is not a good thing. It's human sacrifice and it needs to stop entirely.
Right. Well, we have to get back to morals, and I think a lot of people misunderstand the whole abortion issue as far as, they're using it as a contraceptive rather than, like
so
0.1% of the abortions every year is for
I'll put it this way.
Life of the mother.
Every single state that has up to birth abortion legal, when abortion first became legal, tried to charge people with murder for causing a miscarriage in some way. You know what I mean? So they knew when it was a baby, but then when it comes to abortion, they
right. And I like how a lot of people go to, what if the woman finds out that she's pregnant and she can't afford to? I'm like, well, what if I find out that my dog is pregnant and I can't afford to take care of the litter of puppies? Should I go kick the dog in its belly?
I've got a comparative, but we'll keep it humans. So what if you have a 5-year-old and you lose your job and you can't find another one? Do you get now drown your kid in the tub?
Right. No. Because I mean that child is still dependent on you. Because that's what they want to say, that it's not a baby, it's not a life that's dependent on the mother. Well, dude, that argument is ludicrous and ridiculous because, yeah, like you said, your 5-year-old is still dependent on you for nutrition and sustenance. So
so I would start with a heartbeat law, and then I would go to I would want to transition to a constitutional amendment that artificially ending the life of a baby is murder, and you get the death penalty for killing a child.
I agree.
And I think the abortion doctor should be tried for mass murder, and I think the surgery provider should be turned over to the Hague for crimes against humanity, because those treaties already say that it's a crime against humanity to mutilate somebody's genitals.
All right. Moving on. How will you protect Second Amendment rights while addressing concerns about gun violence? And please, none your business. We will get to some of your statements before we leave.
Okay, so the issue with the Second Amendment rights, the federal government is literally, it's the only one of the amendments that specifically says Congress shall make no law about. So any law that's been passed by Congress needs to be thrown away.
Okay, so then that brings us on to the next question.
Yeah,
do you support
the gun violence? The gun violence. Hold on, you had a 2-part question. So the gun violence issue, that we fix by considering any DA, judge, or parole board that releases somebody for a crime before they would have served their maximum sentence, an accessory to the crime. I think after a few judges and DAs are sitting in prison, they'll stop letting violent criminals out on the street.
Okay, now, do you support federal red flag laws or universal background checks?
So I'm okay with background checks. I don't think that's that big of a deal. But the record needs to be expunged. Yeah, no. I'm just, well, the universal like implies to like, private sales and blah, blah, blah. I think it would be okay to do universal background checks on private sales as long as everything can be done online now. It's not that big a deal. You know what I mean? But as far as the red flag laws, absolutely, positively, no, you cannot take away an American's rights without any due process.
Okay. Do you favor?
And if we have all the crazy people locked up in asylums, then the red flag laws aren't going to be necessary, are they?
Nope. Do you favor a constitutional amendment or law for term limits for members of Congress?
Yeah, we kind of talked about this one. I don't think anybody
Mhm.
should serve in the legislature more than 12 years, which would limit them to 2 terms in the Senate, 3 terms in the House, and 1 term in the Senate, or like, yeah, I mean, that's it. 12 years total for the legislature,
What
both houses.
reforms would what reforms would you propose to improve federal election integrity and voting laws?
Well, since the Constitution says clearly you have to be a citizen to vote, every person who wants to vote needs to prove that they're a citizen. You can only vote on one day. Everybody gets dyed like they do in like countries with 1 billion people, so you can't go and pretend to be somebody else and vote somewhere else. So everybody gets the finger dye that you can't remove, and paper ballots, and they have to be counted. If India, a country of over 1 billion people, can count all their ballots in one day on paper ballots, I think we can do it in the US too.
Okay. How will you combat censorship and protect free speech on social media platforms?
Yeah, and we already kind of like touched on that. If social media companies claiming that they're a publisher, then they lose all of their liability protections as a utility. I mean, that's it. If you just allow them to be sued for violating the law, then
so get rid of Section
they'll
230.
yeah. Well, not get rid of it.
Or,
They have to put in a declaration where they have to declare they're either a publisher or they're a utility. If they're a utility, they can't pull down anything except for illegal material. And if they're a publisher, then they don't get the protections.
okay. Do you support federal protections for religious liberty?
Absolutely, with one exception. It is time in this country that we acknowledge that Islam is not a religion. It is a political ideology whose main goal is to bring about one world caliphate. So their literal belief is that they need to destroy the government of the United States, and that they should kill, enslave, convert, or tax until they have no money anybody who's not Muslim. So yeah, it's completely incompatible with our country, and it's not actually a religion. It's a political ideology.
Okay. How should, I think this is a redundant question, but I'm going to ask it anyways. How should Congress handle social media content moderation and data privacy? I think we just
Okay, so the
that.
government should not be involved in moderation of content, and I think that although I do think that we should have some degree of legislation that they can't tilt their algorithms, that the algorithms have to be based solely on interactions. As far as data privacy, nobody should. I want to build it. That no company can sell any of your information to anybody else unless they have your written permission notarized. That'll end the data privacy issue.
Okay. Last question, and then we'll get on to some of at Nenya Business's comments. Do you believe the 2024 election results were a fair reflection of the will of the people?
No, I actually don't. The reason that the election was more fair than usual is because they were really on board and they had a lot of people watching the polls. However, until we get to all of the suggestions that I made for securing the elections, it's not going to be a fair election, because you still saw a lot of the same shenanigery. And then like the governor's election up here in New Jersey, where a magical like number of people were put in, exactly the number that needed to that they won by, or the difference in the vote from the last time is exactly the number of new people that were added, but they have no proof of the new people. So nope. I actually think maybe we need to go to having to re-register for elections every time there are an election's a good idea too, because then you have to go in and prove that if you're going to vote in this, dude, it's 10 minutes. Like, we can do it every time. But
all
yeah,
right,
it was definitely more fair than the 2020 elections, though. That's for sure.
Okay. All right, Rob, thanks for your time and letting us get to know you and going through this grueling process of 3.5 hours of questions. I'm sure no other candidate is going to do this. If they do, we know where they got it from. So let's get to at Nenya Business R9B. Let's see. There,
All right, none of your business.
after This Guy's is a Joke by Ashley Bannon. I don't know if that's Steve Bannon's niece or whatever, but
That's
we got
funny.
at Nenya Business. They don't want veterans taken care of because they know that if shit hits the fan, the veterans would stand up and stand behind the citizens. Well, I would
No,
agree
I
with
just
you. Some of the veterans are Democrats as well, as we've seen on TikTok and stuff. Some of them wouldn't, but those guys are idiots anyways. And you know, but yes, for the most part, I agree with
okay.
you.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't think it even has I don't think it's even that deep. I just think they don't care about people and they're done with the veterans, so why do they care? Like I think that's what happens. So, but yeah, we owe our veterans. Why would anybody like sign up to be in the military if they're not going to be taken care of when they get home? Getting rid of lifetime pensions for politicians, use those funds to take care of our veterans. Okay. I really, really, really hate when people say stupid, uninformed things like this. Okay. Because there aren't lifetime pensions for politicians. Like that's false. You can like Google it. It is false. There is no lifetime pension for politicians. When a politician leaves office, they get the same pension plan that any other government employee gets. They can't even claim it until they're like 58 or something like that. The bigger problem is that we have politicians living in office forever. Okay. But just like any career, you have a right to retirement. I'd rather switch it over to a 401k kind of program rather than pensions, because pensions are always a bad idea. They're Ponzi schemes. But yeah, this lifetime pension for politicians is an absolute lie. So like it just doesn't happen. Like, and me, I plan to serve 3 years in the House of Representatives. I won't even qualify for a pension plan, and I don't want one. But if I did get a pension plan, it would be equal to what a regular civil service employee gets. So yeah, there's no lifetime. Other people like to say the lie that they get their salary for life. Yeah, it doesn't happen. But as we get rid of more and more of these like 20 and 30-year politicians, those numbers are going to be coming down. I'm more concerned with that we're spending 70 billion a year on military bases in other countries, and a lot of times not even our friends, and not taking care of our veterans. But that's how I propose to pay for it. But yeah, the pensions, yeah, that question was completely on a false premise. How about remove targets from schools, i.e. gun-free zones? Yeah, I don't believe in gun-free zones at all. Like good guys with
I
guns,
think
not bad
that
guys with guns.
I think gun-free zones on their own are unconstitutional and violate the Second Amendment. Some people would disagree with me because of private property and blah blah blah, but yeah,
So
I think you should
if
be allowed
women
to
can
carry a
opt
gun.
out, why can't men? Okay, so I get this argument. And I actually think so. Like since women are always the ones that instigate divorce nowadays, yeah, women should not get alimony. They can get a job just like the men. If women take full custody of the kid because the man doesn't want it, then they should equally pay for the kid. But when it comes down to the very beginning, yeah, before that baby's born, if you're pregnant and you think I'm the dad, yeah, I should have the right to abandon it if you have the right to kill it. But the thing is, I don't think they have the right to kill it any more than I think the father has the right to abandon it. Dude, you know what happened if you did that thing without that thing covering it. You knew what was going to happen. You're responsible for it. Just like the woman is responsible for carrying it to term if she got pregnant.
Right, because the
But
choice
now,
started with intercourse.
right. So, but the reality is the courts do need to look at how they're awarding custody, because like the data shows that kids are more likely to end up in prison and on welfare and addicted to drugs if they grew up in a single female parent household. However, if they grow up raised by a single male parent, the success rates in life is actually equal to a two-parent family. So the men should be getting the custody, not the women to begin with. So I bet you women would have a lot more control over their reproductive abilities if they weren't getting a paycheck for life, if they break up with the guy, or they would actually be faithful to their guy and stay. Just saying.
Right.
I
I believe that
lifetime
lifetime bans on people having their gun rights removed should be unconstitutional as well, because they have proven themselves over a period of time that they're not going to reoffend. Well, what would that period of time be? You know,
Okay,
I mean,
hold on. I'm the candidate. Let me talk. Did you freeze? Do we even have a day to go on? What's going on? Okay, you're there.
Cool. I wasn't freezed. I was just being quiet that whole time, waiting for you to talk.
Okay, so none of your business. You're like talking about the same thing I just said, that the women shouldn't get alimony. There should be 50-50 custody. If they move apart, the dad should be the custody, or should be the one with the custody, and the woman can pay child support, because it's proven that women have worse results when they're single parents. But yeah, I can't see any reason why most men would, like, I got married, but like, I can see why fewer and fewer men are getting married. But at the same time, the men need to be responsible. Stop banging crazy chicks. Like there's no nice and political way to say that. So anyways, but the lifetime ban on people having their guns rights removed should be unconstitutional as well, because they have proven themselves. I disagree. I disagree. But I have a caveat here. They take away people's gun rights for some really crazy stuff. But if you lost your gun rights because you committed murder, or you committed aggravated assault, or because you attempted murder, you should never get your gun rights back. But I think there shouldn't even be the option for that, because if you commit murder or you commit rape, you should be dead anyways. There should be no gun rights for you to get back. So if you're out there robbing people, we already know that you will rob people if you're put in a situation where you're at that stress level. Like, that's the thing. Your decision-making processes don't change. The fact that you just didn't get caught doing it lately, no, that's wrong. Now, there are situations where it should be more easily reviewable. And I'll actually, I hope my brother doesn't get mad that I put this out there, but he found out that his girlfriend was cheating on him when he was like 20 years old or 25 or something like that. Anyway, so somebody sent the cops to do a welfare check on him, and he was fine. He just wanted to be by himself because he had just went through something traumatic. He caught his girlfriend cheating. And so he finally ended up deciding he was going to leave the conversation, and he left. And so, of course, it turned into a high-speed chase, cost multiple jurisdictions. And so he got felony fleeing. Okay. Nothing like that ever happened in his life again. But he didn't do anything violent. He didn't assault anybody. He wasn't a danger to anybody except for maybe driving a little crazy. But he has his driver's license back, so he could repeat the same thing with a car. And he hasn't. And yet he can't get his gun rights back because he got a felony conviction. So yeah, I think there is some degree that, like, there should be options for getting gun rights restored. But anybody who committed an actual violent crime should never have a gun, because at some point they will use that to their detriment. But guess what?
No.
Like, I get the idea that they should be able to protect their families and whatnot, but when you make bad decisions, you end up with lifetime consequences sometimes.
And what about do you feel the same about voting? Do you think people should be able to get their voting rights back?
Okay, so on the voting rights, losing voting rights for felons, I think as soon as they're out of prison and off parole and nobody has direct authority over them, then yes, absolutely, they should get their voting rights back.
Okay. And they've paid their debt to society.
Yeah, for me, it's not about paying their debt for society. Prisoners who are under control be able to vote because he has control of how they vote. That parole officer has sway over how they vote.
Right.
When somebody is 100% in control of your life, you cannot make independent decisions. No, you shouldn't be able to vote.
Right.
So you initially lost it by committing the crime. You get it back when you are now making good decisions and nobody else is over your life and nobody can influence your decisions. So I hope that makes sense.
All right. Well, again, Rob Brown for the 10th Congressional District of Texas. Thank you for joining us and going through this process of getting to know you and understanding who you are as a candidate. Uh, I hope you all enjoyed this and learned something from Rob. And I hope that you go out if you're in the 10th District and you vote for Robert Brown and get
Yeah.
government out of your life, your business, and your wallet. Thank you for watching.
Yeah.
Leave a
Hold on.
leave a like.
Go to brownfortexas.com. You can actually reach out to me here, or you weren't able to put one in. Go ahead. You can go to the website. You can reach out to me there. Also, you can support the campaign there. If you live in the district, I always need more volunteers. We got a lot of volunteers out here working, but we do need more. So yeah, if you want to support the campaign in any way, make sure you go to brownfortexas.com, reach out to me, and don't forget, vote. March 3rd is the primary. Early voting starts February 17th. So get out there and vote so we can get government out of your life, your business, and your wallet.
I was going to let you plug yourself when I was done with my spiel, but thank you anyways.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, go out March 3rd, vote Brown for Texas, visit the website, and watch out for us to come back online and have a chat together. We will be doing more of these shows to get him out into the public and out there for everyone to see. And leave your comments and like the show, and hopefully we'll see you soon.